Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Was this really a monkey? No matter how shocked they were, facts were facts. The attacking gigant, in particular, realized the instant Riku's power surged that he was up against something else entirely. Veins bulged on his body as he pumped his strength to the max. Riku snorted and leapt into the air, throwing a punch of his own. Boom. In a flash, Riku crossed the short distance and met the gigant's fist in midair. The 2 fists, one tiny, one titanic, collided, shaking the sky with a deafening explosion and stirring up violent winds that cleared everything around them. The air, blasted apart, rushed outward as a shockwave, emptying the field. This was a clash of pure strength. Boom. Another thud. In the eyes of the astonished gigant, their comrade was sent flying, unable to stop himself from crashing into a mountain, causing the whole peak to collapse. His body was half buried in the rubble. His massive arm was drenched in blood, and bone fragments stuck out. It was a bloody, brutal sight. The Gigant King and his tribe stared in shock, faces dark with disbelief. How could this be? A monkey so much smaller than them had just bested one of their own in a direct contest of raw power. Was this guy really a human? The Gigant King was the first to snap out of it, his expression grave. He no longer called Riku a monkey, because the man's power demanded respect. Humphrey, that's what you get for underestimating Lord Riku. Just wait to be crushed. Zerla sneered at the stunned gigant. Weren't you so proud of your strength? Let's beat you at your own game. This must be a new kind of humiliation. Human, my name is Bok. I am king of the gigant. State your name, the king rumbled, his powerful voice shaking the heavens and earth. Riku Dola. Riku stood suspended in midair, meeting Bok, the king of the gigant race, with a calm gaze. Riku Dola. I'll remember you. Bok glanced at Riku with indifference, nodded in acknowledgement, and then spoke with killing intent. So, die here. As he finished speaking, Bok flexed his massive muscles and punched straight at Riku. Riku, for his part, simply grinned and exploded with power of his own, meeting the blow head-on. Boom. A deafening thunderclap shook the sky as the air was blasted apart. The shockwave was even more terrifying than before. The earth collapsed, mountain peaks shattered, and everything nearby was devastated beyond recognition. This time, it wasn't a one-sided overpowering scene like before. Instead, the 2 clashed in midair, locked in a terrifying stalemate, an aura of pure violence surrounding them. Riku, is this your power? No wonder you were able to injure my kin, Bok said, amazed at how Riku, so much smaller, could match his strength. Big guy, you're not bad yourself. Not many can take me head-on in this state, Riku replied, his fighting spirit blazing. So you're a warrior too? Someone who craves and loves battle, Bok remarked. But this is a battlefield, not a place to show off individual prowess. Bok's eyes suddenly sharpened. So, human warrior, I can only say this, sorry. As soon as the words left Bok's mouth, 3 more gigants charged in from the side, all attacking Riku at once. At the same time, Bok put even more force behind his attacks, actually managing to push Riku, who was using his forbidden power, onto the defensive, clearly having held back earlier. So, ganging up on me, huh? Too bad that won't work, Riku said, feeling the attacks coming from the sides. He grinned and instantly activated Spatial Shift, vanishing from his original spot. That's Flugel's Spatial Shift. Bok felt the sudden emptiness as the force he'd been clashing with disappeared, causing him to stumble, his heart filled with shock. How could a human not only possess strength rivaling the Dragonia but also use Spatial Shift like a Flugel? Not good. At that moment, Bok suddenly saw Riku reappear right in front of the neck of one of his kin, his pupils contracting sharply. But it was already too late. Instantly shifting to the right side of Gigant's neck, Riku unleashed the full force of his body, swinging a sweeping kick at the giant's throat. Crack. Boom. Even with the massive difference in size, the neck was still an incredibly vulnerable spot. The terrifying force of Riku's kick caused the gigant's throat to cave in at a speed visible to the naked eye. There was a sharp snap, then blood spurted as the giant was sent flying, smashing through several mountain peaks before finally landing in the plains far away like a ragdoll. The huge power carried by his body even left a massive crater in the ground, the earth shaking and dust billowing into the sky. The scene was so shocking that even Zerlis, who'd seen many of Riku's unbelievable feats, couldn't help but stare in awe. Boom. But it wasn't over yet. Riku used spatial shift again, landing another devastating kick that sent a second gigant flying. This one collapsed on the ground, barely alive and unable to rise. Flyugal could also use spatial shift, but compared to Riku, most Flyugal didn't possess this kind of overwhelming power. Especially that terrifying strength enough to shatter their formidable defenses with ease, guaranteeing a kill. His incredible speed and much smaller size compared to the gigants made it impossible for the giants to react in time. Now, all Bok felt was his rage threatening to pierce the heavens, yet at the same time, he was overcome by a sense of powerlessness. Because Riku was like a natural enemy to the gigant race. In the end, it became an apocalypse for the gigants. Facing someone like Riku, an absolute nemesis, they simply couldn't attack or defend effectively, only get beaten down. Even when they tried to protect their vital spots, it was useless. And Riku was slippery as an eel, untouchable, impossible to hit. So, the gigants kept getting slaughtered, not even touching a single hair on Riku's head. Seeing this, Zerlis silently mourned for the gigants. Of all the people to provoke, they just had to pick Riku. Originally, Lord Riku was probably just here, treasure hunting. Maybe if the gigants had been more diplomatic, they could have built an alliance. Instead, they chose to try and kill Riku and her. That left nothing to discuss. Once they showed killing intent, their fate was sealed. Riku. Watching his kin fall one after another before his eyes, Bok, the king of the gigants, let out a furious roar, his murderous aura almost becoming tangible. So much anger. But too bad, you're not a protagonist. Yelling won't give you a power-up and let you defeat your enemy, Riku said coldly, pausing midair to look down at Bok and the remaining injured gigants. Since they'd tried to kill him, they had to bear his counterattack, and this one would be fatal. Against enemies, Riku never held back. But honestly, I'm getting bored, so I'll send you all on your way, Riku said icily. Shit. Zerlis, watching from the sidelines, suddenly realized what Riku was about to do and immediately ran off to the distance. She'd sensed his intent. Bok, too, noticed something, but he couldn't retreat. Fourth gate, gate of pain, open. Riku roared. Instantly, a green aura burst from his body, rocketing skyward and stirring up the clouds. So you were the source of that power. Bok's massive eyes went wide as he felt Riku's pressure, some of his anger replaced by clarity and fear. He suddenly recalled the green-blue pillar of light that had once destroyed stars. That's right. So be destroyed, Riku replied coldly. At the same time, he gathered intertwined green and blue energy in his palm, aiming it at the gigants below. The immense force distorted the surrounding space, everything rippling and becoming unstable. Don't underestimate us, human. Bok, king of the gigants, suddenly surged with a red-black aura, roaring to the heavens. The other gigants, faces twisted in fury, got up and joined Bok at his side. I never underestimated you. But erasing you all is my decision, and that won't change. Riku's face was expressionless as he looked at the gigants, then unleashed his power at its peak. In an instant, the same green-blue pillar of light that had once destroyed stars descended from above, tearing through space, and crashed down toward the gigants. The green-blue pillar of light, powerful enough to annihilate stars, descended from the heavens, engulfing the entire area. It was as if time and space had been pierced through, the air was blasted away, and nothing could withstand this radiance. Rah! In that instant, Bok, king of the gigant race, suddenly let out a furious roar, spreading his giant arms wide as he faced the green-blue beam head-on. His entire body turned a crimson-black, a strange power erupting forth his hidden trump card. With his unleashed power, Bok's strength was no less than Reginlef's. Boom. Crack. In a split second, Bok met the green-blue pillar head-on. With a muffled boom, everything around them was shattered by the overwhelming force. The earth split open and collapsed, the valley beneath Bok's feet caving in at a terrifying rate. Bok's veins bulged and even burst, blood spurting everywhere, but he still couldn't hold back the pillar of light, his body sinking rapidly into the fractured earth. King, let us help you. At that moment, all the remaining gigants finally reacted, roaring as they raised their hands to support the sky-falling green-blue light. Even as their hands were scorched black by the immense energy, they didn't retreat a single step. Over 100 gigants joined forces to resist Riku's attack, and with Bok's added strength, they actually managed to stop the attack's advance. These big oafs are really something, Zerlis said, gazing in awe at the scene in the distance. It was her first time seeing one of Riku's attacks actually blocked, maybe even pushed back. But this was already their limit. Unfortunately, Lord Riku's limit was far beyond this. Zurlis shook her head slightly. When it came to fighting Lord Riku, doom for the Gigants was inevitable. Human, take it back. Bok roared, as if squeezing out every last ounce of strength. He actually managed to push the green-blue pillar upwards, almost reflecting it back. Interesting. Even though not all Gigants are here, nearly half the race's strength really is impressive. But it's a pity for you, your opponent is me. Riku looked down on the desperate Gigants, shaking his head. Fifth gate, gate of limit. Open. With a low growl, Riku directly opened the gate of limit. Instantly, wild blue-green energy surged around his body, merging with his crimson spiritual power. Not only that, but the explosive surge was so intense that even Riku's body could barely withstand it, and fine cracks spread across his skin as if he would collapse. However, his super-accelerated regeneration kicked in, healing the damage and keeping his body in a stable state. How is this possible? The Gigants were all horrified at Riku's transformation. Even Bok could no longer keep his composure, a look of despair appearing in his eyes. He could actually get even stronger. And not just a little by a huge margin. Lord Riku's power has now completely surpassed Lord Regenlef. On the sidelines, Zurlis, though she'd expected it, still couldn't hide her shock. If Riku's strength before had only matched the Dragonia, now he had fully surpassed it enough to crush a Dragonia outright. This feels pretty good. As a reward for breaking through my limits again, you all can have this. Riku looked down on the Gigants, unleashing a terrifying power. In an instant, a heavy pressure rippled through space, and the energy of the green-blue pillar more than doubled. Is this defeat a true defeat for us, Gigants? What a joke. Bok's body, without a doubt, was swallowed up by the pillar of light, unable to resist any longer. At the very end, he let out a self-mocking laugh. Who could have imagined that those who once stood high above would be annihilated, driven to extinction by humans they had always considered no better than monkeys? Although the Gigants weren't limited to just this tribe, the annihilation of their tribe was now unavoidable. Boom. A tremendous explosion swept out, tearing through space, the earth, and even shaking the entire planet. At that moment, it was as if energy, time, and space itself all came to a halt. The world turned brilliantly colorful. The cracks in space rapidly healed, dense spirit energy filling the area. And in the depths of that multicolored world, Riku saw a shining polyhedron, a star-shaped regular dodecahedron in the form of a pentagram. That was the most important thing in this world, Suniaster, also known as Star Grail. The gods waged war to obtain the Suniaster. That was the true origin of the War of the Gods. Just as Riku was about to act, the Suniaster vanished along with the rainbow world, and space returned to normal. The attack, which should have been enough to destroy the planet, was simply erased, leaving only the nearby valley obliterated. At the same time, the bodies of many Gigants lay scattered across the ground. They should have been reduced to dust, but with the Suniaster erasing Riku's energy, they were left intact. Hey, I knew this would happen, but seeing it with my own eyes is still pretty shocking, Riku said, suddenly laughing to himself. The Suniaster is the victor's prize. To reveal the Grail requires enough power to shatter the Spirit's Corridor, but that only allows it to appear for a short time. On the surface, one needs to kill all the god races. But the god races are incarnations of concepts, born from the Spirit's Corridor, endless and inexhaustible. That's a misunderstanding. To truly become the victor, one must break open the Spirit's Corridor, and force the Star Grail to appear. Only then is there a chance to become the true winner. In the original story, it took luring the God of War into using a world-ending attack, combining the trump cards of the other races, and the Ex Machina guiding the energy to finally shatter the Spirit's Corridor, forcing the Grail to appear and erasing the power that could destroy the planet, making the Grail manifest for a longer time. In the end, it was only because the Ex Machina sacrificed nearly all their units to extract the God of War's divine core that the Grail could be claimed. Unfortunately, in the end, their efforts failed, and the newly manifested God of Gain snatched victory at the last moment. Still, compared to total defeat, that was already the best outcome. This time, I will be the absolute victor. I'll defeat the God of War, and take the throne of the one true God as the real winner, Riku muttered. That day isn't far off. Ding. 105 broken Gigant corpses detected. Recyclable. Value, 1 million exchange points. Recycle? Just then, the system's prompt echoed in Riku's mind, making him freeze in place, his eyes widening slightly. 1 million exchange points? Chapter 51 million exchange points? Riku said, visibly moved. Yes, ordinary Gigants are worth 40,000 exchange points each. But because you wrecked them so badly with your last attack, their value dropped a lot, the system explained. So basically, I went a little overboard, Riku muttered with a shake of his head. The system's recycling mechanic was probably designed to make him stronger through killing. But it hadn't expected him to power up this quickly, even taking a path of his own. While Riku could be merciless to his enemies, he wasn't the type to randomly attack others. Wiping out every race just to collect exchange points was far too crazy. Of course, if he got extremely unlucky and kept pulling garbage from the chests, who knows, maybe he would go hunt down some monsters or lesser races just to get stronger. A second diamond grade chest, huh? I wonder what I'll get from it. With that, Riku turned his gaze to the distant diamond chest. He instantly teleported over. Seeing this, Zurlis, who'd been staring in a daze from far away, finally snapped out of it and hurriedly flew in his direction. By then, Riku had already placed his hand on the diamond chest. With a crisp click, the dazzling diamond chest popped open. At the same time, a familiar voice rang out in Riku's mind. Ding! Congratulations, Master, you have opened a diamond-grade chest and obtained the Sun Authority, Leo. Sun Authority, Leo, from problem children are coming from another world, grants the wielder invulnerability to all weapons. The Sun Authority? Riku froze for a moment, then muttered in shock. Even in the little garden, full of gods and Buddhas, the Sun Authorities were tremendously important gifts, prized even by divine kings. Their significance was so great that entire wars had been fought over them, with countless gods competing for them. Leo's Sun Authority makes you completely invulnerable to weapons, even top-tier divine relics can't pierce the wielder's body, Riku murmured. Then he gave a wry smile. Unfortunately, it wouldn't help him much at this stage. It wasn't going to be decisive in his life or death battle with the god of war. Well, pulling something this good is already hitting the jackpot. Complaining would just be greedy. He shook his head, taking the Leo Sun Authority under his control. Lord Riku, did something just appear over there, or was I seeing things? Zurlis arrived and asked in confusion. That was no illusion, it was the Star Grail manifesting, Riku replied cheerfully. The Star Grail? Hearing this, Zurlis's dragon eyes widened in shock. But doesn't the Star Grail only appear after a victor has been decided? Hee, you'll understand soon enough. As for why it showed up now, it's because the power I released earlier was so overwhelming that it threatened the entire planet. The Grail appeared to erase that destructive force, Riku explained. I see, Zurlis replied, her expression clearing with sudden understanding. Alright, let's go. We're done here. Next target, the Sirens. Riku flashed onto Zurlis's back and lay down, relaxing. That last burst had used up a huge amount of his strength, he needed a good rest. Understood, Zurlis replied respectfully, flying in the direction Riku indicated. As they traveled, Riku considered his options for the chests. He now had a massive 1,040,000 exchange points. It'd be a shame not to use them. System, exchange for a supreme chest. After thinking for a moment, Riku gave the command in his mind. Exchange for supreme chest, deducting 100,000 exchange points. Ding, exchange successful, the system's voice echoed in his mind. A moment later, a luxurious purple chest appeared before Riku. Smiling, he placed his hand on it. With a crisp click, the chest opened, revealing a dazzling item wrapped in a ball of light. At the same time, the system's voice rang out, ding. Congratulations, Master, you have opened a supreme chest and obtained Excalibur. Excalibur? Not really all that useful to me. Riku frowned. As much as he liked the Aoj King's legendary weapon, for someone who already had star-busting strength and needed to surpass even the god of war, this wasn't much help. Master, this is the true original version, not the city-level noble phantasm. It can handle your power and even amplify it, I see. With that, Riku nodded in satisfaction. He took out Excalibur and held it. Radiant, noble, it seemed to embody the truth of victory. While it looked similar to Artoria's, there were subtle differences. Once he was sure it would be useful, Riku tossed it into the system's storage. System, exchange for a divine chest. Riku's golden eyes flashed with anticipation. Even he couldn't keep his composure, excitement and tension mixed together as he awaited what was inside. A divine chest. The highest tier in the current system, sure to have something game-breaking. Otherwise, it wouldn't deserve the name. Divine chest exchange successful. Deducting 500,000 exchange points. Master's remaining balance, 440,000. A moment later, an orange gold chest appeared before Riku, making him narrow his eyes. He took a deep breath, calmed himself, and placed his hand on the chest, opening it. Ding. Congratulations, Master, you have opened a divine chest and obtained the Saiyan God bloodline. The Saiyan God bloodline. Riku was stunned, his eyes flickering. The Saiyan bloodline was the ultimate cheat, and this Saiyan God bloodline was far stronger than any ordinary Saiyans. For the divine chest, This was definitely top tier. Riku stroked his chin, nodding in satisfaction. System, fuse the bloodline. He gave the order. Ding. Kindly note, the Saiyan God bloodline has extremely high physical requirements. Attempting to fuse it now will cause your body to collapse, damn it. Riku's face instantly turned dark. If I can't fuse the bloodline, what's the point? Riku said, annoyed. Master, the divine Saiyan bloodline is different from ordinary Saiyan blood. Its potential is immense. Once fused, your physique will soar. Going Super Saiyan is easy, Super Saiyan God is within reach, and surpassing even it is just a matter of your own talent. But it's far easier than for regular Saiyans. Giving me a sugar-coated pitch now doesn't help. The key thing is, I can't even use it. Riku rolled his eyes. Actually, there is a way to fuse the bloodline. It's a special privilege only available for divine chests, huh? What way? Riku's eyes lit up, and he quickly asked. Bloodlines from divine chests can be perfectly fused by spending exchange points, TCH, so in the end, you just want more points. Riku clicked his tongue. Go on, how much? For 300,000 exchange points, the system can help you perfectly integrate the divine Saiyan bloodline. The initial result will only be a partial power-up and grant you the regular Saiyan bloodline's abilities. Once your physique meets the requirements, the divine bloodline will fully awaken, and all the dormant power will erupt at once. Compared to risking self-destruction, this is the safest way. That made Riku narrow his eyes suspiciously. Since when did the system start acting like a salesman? Alright, last question. If I integrate the divine Saiyan bloodline, am I still human? Riku hesitated, then asked seriously. You are. Even though it's called the divine bloodline, that just means it's powerful. At your core, you're still human. That's fine, then. Riku nodded. Let's do it, he said resolutely. Understood. A moment later, the ball of light before Riku disappeared, merging into his body. Instantly, he felt his blood begin to boil, steam pouring off him. A wild, violent energy surged inside, threatening to tear him apart. Now Riku understood why the system had warned him about his body breaking down. His current physique was strong, but compared to this bloodline's terrifying potential, it was still far too weak. Just then, a cool sensation washed through him, soothing the raging blood and making Riku comfortable again. The wild energy gradually faded. At the same time, he felt his body grow even stronger. A kingly aura suddenly burst forth across the land, commanding, overwhelming. Lord Riku? Overwhelmed by the surge of power, Zerulus nearly dropped from the sky in shock. What just happened? Why had Lord Riku's strength suddenly soared again? Phew, this feels incredible, Riku muttered a moment later, relishing the sensation. The thrill of feeling your power rise was unbeatable. Lord Riku? Zerulus called out uncertainly. It's nothing, let's keep moving, Riku replied casually. Alright, Zerulus said, not pressing further. She knew what to ask and what to keep to herself. If Riku wanted to talk, he would. A few hours later, over the endless blue ocean, the siren race below sensed Riku and Zerulus's overwhelming presence and abandoned their lair in terror, fleeing for their lives. Riku couldn't be bothered with them. He dove straight into the sea, heading for the ocean floor to open a platinum chest. The crushing water pressure would instantly pulp any normal person, but to Riku, it was nothing. He leisurely placed his hand on the platinum chest. Ding. Congratulations, Master, you have opened a platinum chest and gained +10 charm. Charm? What the heck? Riku was stunned. He knew platinum chests and higher could yield unique abilities or useful bonuses, but this was a first. A high charm stat gives you a great first impression with women, strong friendship with men, and inspires awe in your subordinates. The higher your charm, the better, so what's my charm stat now? Riku raised an eyebrow. Unable to query, Riku was speechless. Oh well, having it is better than nothing. I guess picking up girls will be even easier from now on. He shook his head, not wanting to overthink it. Why did he get this? It probably had to do with the siren. While they weren't especially powerful and ranked just above humans, they were known for their charm abilities. Riku burst out of the sea and landed on Zerulus's back. As Riku appeared, Zerulus suddenly felt her heart flutter. Once she realized, she froze. She respected Riku deeply, but with such a huge difference in species, how could she possibly feel this way? Lord Riku, you seem different somehow, Zerulus said hesitantly. How so? Riku asked, grinning. You just seem more attractive than before, Zerulus admitted. That just means I'm too handsome for my own good, Riku joked for the first time in a while. Maybe that's it, Zerulus murmured, tilting her head in confusion. So where to next? She asked. Even as Riku's mount, she rather enjoyed it. With him, she didn't have to worry about being killed, ambushed, or threatened, she could just travel in peace. Her only small regret was not being able to take on her human form. Next. Let's go see Shui, Riku said after a moment's thought. He cared deeply about Shui. If she got hurt or even felt wronged, he couldn't bear it. Shui's journey to become the full connection command unit was only slightly less difficult than Riku's quest to defeat the god of war. Shui, huh? Got it? Zeralis paused, understanding, and nodded silently. Without further delay, Riku activated spatial shift and vanished. Riku. Atop the mountain peak, Shui stood gazing into the distance. Her cute clothes were covered in black soot, but she didn't bother to shake it off. Instead, she murmured to herself. If it's for your sake, these memories, this wish, I'm willing to share them with every unit. After a while, the confusion faded from Shui's eyes, replaced by firm resolve. I already told you, no doing anything reckless. A voice, full of affection and gentle helplessness, sounded out, making Shui startle and look up. In front of her, soaring through the air, was the enormous white dragon, Zeralis. And standing on Zeralis's head was the one she loved most. Riku, you're here. Shui flew over and hugged Riku tightly, her voice trembling. Shui. Failed. It's okay. Riku gently patted her head, speaking softly. As long as we're together, that's all the strength we need. But. Shui clung to him, guilt written all over her face. It's because I was too selfish. I didn't want to share everything about myself with all the other units. Shui, that's proof that you truly have a heart. Riku said seriously. Now, let's solve this together. Hearing this, Shui let go and looked up at Riku for several seconds before slowly breaking into a smile and nodding firmly. Shui, here's a gift for you. Take it. Riku patted her head, then took out the item he'd drawn from the platinum chest in the dwarf lands. The source of machinery. This is. Streams of data flashed through Shui's eyes as she stared, stunned. This is the source of machinery, a precious item that will let you evolve. It can also allow other ex machina to have hearts of their own, Riku explained briefly. Thank you, Riku. Shui hugged the white energy source, murmuring softly. There's no need to say thank you between us. Riku smiled gently. Hurry up and absorb it. The final battle is about to begin. I'll need your strength for what's coming. Hearing this, Shui nodded seriously. 2 cables extended from her back and pierced into the glowing orb. Instantly, the air around her began to stir. Shui was engulfed in the sphere of light. Riku waited silently. He waited for a week. After a week, the sphere of light faded, and Shui appeared before Riku. Her previous clothes had been destroyed, leaving her naked and revealing her beautiful body. But Riku didn't pay attention to that. Instead, he focused on her expression. Now, she looked no different from an ordinary girl. The data-filled look in her eyes was gone, replaced by a lively spirit and subtle shifts of emotion. Other than her signature headpiece and the cables at her back, all the external machine parts had vanished, making her almost indistinguishable from a normal girl, though far more beautiful. Shui, how do you feel? Riku asked with concern, taking out a set of clothes from storage and handing them to her. It feels wonderful. My functions have improved greatly, and fighting Dragonia will be no problem. I can also transmit my heart as data, so other ex machina can have hearts too, Shui said with a bright smile, hugging Riku tightly and almost obsessively. That's all that matters. Riku breathed a sigh of relief. Even though the system had assured him nothing would go wrong, when it came to Shui, he couldn't help but worry. Oh, Riku. I've already created the perfect whole. If you want tightness, softness, or MMPH. Shui suddenly looked up, face turning crimson with shyness and anticipation. But before she could finish, Riku quickly covered her mouth with his hand. Even so, Zeralis still heard and shook her head with a wry smile. Ahem. Shui, how confident are you in becoming the full connection command unit now? Ignoring Shui's aggrieved look, Riku hurriedly changed the subject. If you count my feelings for you, I'm 100% sure, Shui said, looking up at him with unwavering determination. That's good. Hearing this, Riku let out a breath. He'd always believed Shui could do it, he'd only asked to distract her. But before that, I want to tell you something, Shui said, suddenly nervous. What is it? Riku's expression tensed for a second, then relaxed as he answered. The truth is. Riku, it was I who destroyed your hometown. Shui lowered her head, not daring to meet his eyes, her voice full of anxiety. Even though she knew telling the truth might make Riku hate her or even leave her, deep down, she knew she couldn't keep hiding it. Now that she had a true heart, overwhelming guilt and remorse compelled her to come clean, even if it meant Riku would hate her. I've known for a long time. Riku replied, gently stroking Shui's head, I made our contract knowing that. Past, present, or future, our bond has always been unbreakable, nothing can separate us. During the Ex Machina's battle with Ernlif the Ultimate, Ernlif used his last strength to unleash his ultimate attack, Incinerating Roar. The Ex Machina couldn't take that hit directly. If they tried, they'd suffer huge losses. Shui, acting as the analysis unit, managed to divert most of the attack away, sacrificing only a few Ex Machina units. But in the process, the blast hit Riku's village, killing nearly everyone. Only Riku survived, watching the devastation with cold eyes. Later, Shui noticed Riku's existence, giving rise to her desire to seek a heart, which ultimately led to her being abandoned. Riku. Shui stared at him in disbelief. She never imagined Riku had always known, and that, knowing the truth, he not only hadn't killed her, but stayed by her side all this time. Alright, this isn't the time for that. We'll talk later, once we're home. Right now, there's important work to do. Riku patted her head gently, stopping her from getting lost in her thoughts. Shui's eyes grew moist, her chest filling with a strange, new feeling. She nodded vigorously. Riku, leave it to me. With that, Shui spoke with utter conviction, her eyes shining with passionate emotion. Connection initiated. Connection successful. Beginning data transmission. Instantly, geometric rings of light appeared at the sides of Shui's head, and a series of voices echoed across the sky. Chapter 51. This time, Shui's actions were swift and forceful. She reconnected instantly, not even bothering to talk things out. She simply transmitted the data directly. By the time the Ex Machina processed what was happening, it was already too late. However, when they received the data, none of them resisted. This time, they didn't treat it like a virus. In fact, in the end, the authority for the full connection command unit was transferred directly to Shui. Riku, I did it. Several hours later, Shui opened her eyes and joyfully hugged Riku, looking for praise. Shui, you're amazing, done so quickly, Riku replied with a gentle smile. This made Shui extremely happy, her face full of enjoyment and delight. Master. At that moment, space rippled, and hundreds of Ex Machina appeared. Their expressions weren't stiff and mechanical anymore, but far more human-like. Though not as lifelike as Shui, it was a big change and only the beginning. No doubt, they would continue to evolve. Seeing all the Ex Machina appear and call him Master, Riku froze for a second. Then, noticing Shui's subtle wink, he couldn't help but smile wryly. This girl must have done something sneaky while transmitting the data. The final victory point for the Ex Machina is in hand. This game. It's time to end it. Riku gazed up at the sky, as if staring straight through space to meet the eyes of the god of war. After taking care of a few minor matters with the Ex Machina, Riku brought Shui and Zeralis back to the Werebeast tribe's settlement. Upon returning to the Werebeast village, Riku found Fi and Jibril in the guest room, both looking weak. Fi, Jibril, why do you both seem so drained? Was there an enemy attack? Riku asked, his voice serious. Husband, there was no enemy. I just finished my transformation and couldn't help but spar with Jibril, Fi replied, tail swishing awkwardly. At this point, Fi was different from before. Her aura of strength flowed naturally, her skin even whiter, and she looked even cuter than before. After her transformation, Fi wanted revenge on me. That's how things turned out, Jibril added. Fortunately, thanks to her contract with Riku, Jibril's strength increased whenever his did. Otherwise, she might have lost to Fi this time. In the end, it was a draw. Since it wasn't a fight to the death and the difference was slight, that's just how it was. Had things gotten heated and they both ended up seriously injured, Riku would have come home and spanked them both out of pure rage. Still, the changes were enormous. Roughly speaking, aside from someone on the level of the Dragonia, there probably wasn't anyone left who could beat them. Jibril let out a sigh. I see, Riku said, going over to pinch Fi's beast ears. Seeing her shy reaction, he nodded. Master, it seems Shui has changed, too. Did she succeed? Jibril asked curiously. Yes. Shui is now the full connection command unit, and she's transformed as well. In terms of individual combat power, she's probably about on par with you two, Riku replied with a smile. Fi and Jibril both stared in shock at Shui. While the Ex Machina were an overpowered race, their real strength came from their networked forms. Now that Shui was this strong on her own, plus the analytical and mimicking abilities of the Ex Machina, her fighting power was probably above theirs. Hee hee. Seeing their stunned looks, Shui smiled faintly and clung to Riku's arm, as if claiming her territory. Ugh. On the other side, Fi puffed up her cheeks and hugged Riku's other arm. Oh my, Master is really living the good life, though it looks like there's no room for me anymore. One lily on each arm, how enviable, Jibril said with a sly smile. Riku just rolled his eyes. Jibril, as always, liked to stir the pot. Clearly, she needed some more discipline. Night fell. Fi and Riku ended up having some fun together, their passion igniting in the little forest. Riku, pressing Fi against a tree, found the whole experience quite enjoyable. True to her word, Fi never refused him anything. Given their strength, there was no need to worry about peeping. Anyone within 10 kilometers would instantly be detected, so they could enjoy themselves in peace. Afterwards, in the middle of the night, Riku and Fi returned to their rooms. Drumroll was already waiting for them. And so, Riku once again embarked on his disciplinary journey. As for Shui, although she noticed everything, she just felt a little jealous and didn't interfere. She knew Riku kept her in his heart, and that was enough. The next day at noon, Riku took Shui back to the human settlement. As for Zerlis, she bid them farewell and returned to the Dragonia, saying she was going to study magic with the Dragonia king. Riku had no reason to stop her. Riku, honestly. You've been gone so long. It looks like all those girls from other races have totally bewitched you. The moment Riku got home, Kura scolded him, hands on her hips. Her jealousy was pretty obvious. Well, I'm back now, aren't I? And this time, I'm here to get married. The three of us, together, Riku replied, rubbing his nose and speaking softly. Get married. With Riku. Shui's face flushed bright red, and she started murmuring, looking absolutely adorable. Married? All three of us? Riku, you've really gotten bold, Kura said with a teasing grin. But then, thinking it over, her smile became sly. Still, it's not a bad idea. Otherwise, someone getting married first would make things feel unbalanced. I have no objection. I want to marry Riku, Shui said eagerly. That stunned Kura. Shui now seemed so human, none of her old stiffness from when they first met. Riku, why now? Why not wait until after the final battle? I'm not in a hurry, Kura asked, thinking of Riku's well-being. To her, while marrying Riku was important, the bigger issue was the war. They'd finally made it this far, now was not the time to let things fall apart. Marriage could wait. Kura, you know, the phrase after this battle, I'll go home and get married, that's the biggest death flag of all, Riku said, staring at Kura, eyes glinting with mischief as he uttered the classic line. Huh? Kura was totally lost. What's a death flag? Ahem, don't overthink it. Riku rubbed his face and said with a chuckle. I was just joking. That phrase is full of superstition in anime and dramas, people who say it almost always end up doomed. That's why he couldn't help but tease. I'm really happy you want to marry me, Riku. But shouldn't we wait until after the war is over? Kura asked hesitantly. Well, I'm not sure I won't fail, but just in case I think it's more fun to get married first and enjoy married life for a bit, Riku suggested with a grin. I agree. That's what I think, too. Shui cheerfully raised her little hand. She hadn't been good at expressing herself before and used to lack emotions, so she'd never been in a rush. But now, after seeing Riku getting close with Fi and Drumroll, she felt a little envious at being left out. Since you both say so, I guess I have no reason to refuse, Kura said with a shake of her head. Then it's decided. Riku smiled, finalizing the decision. Riku immediately let his fellow people know about the wedding. In an instant, the entire human settlement became lively. Everyone gave their heartfelt blessings, and quite a few men looked on in envy. After all, marrying two girls at once was a dream come true. Sure, one was from another race, but during the time Riku brought Shui home, everyone realized she was harmless, so humanity accepted her pretty well. Riku then transferred all the humans to the Werebeast tribe and told Fi about the wedding. Though Fi was a bit sulky, she didn't try to stop it. Instead, she ordered the Werebeasts to help with preparations. Soon, even the elves, dwarves, vampires, and Dragonia all came from far and wide. The dwarf commander brought dozens of their leaders, Zerlis came with a group of white dragons, the vampires arrived with Queen Sonia and her entourage, and Thinkner Valen herself paused her work on Void Zero protection and arrived with her people. Even a large contingent of Ex Machina showed up, stunning all the other races. The grand wedding took place in the Werebeast tribe's village. Every major race gathered together for Riku's wedding, a sight never before seen. At first, the humans were nervous because to the other races, humans were synonymous with insect. But they soon realized that these powerful races bore them no ill will, on the contrary, they were polite and respectful, leaving the humans in awe. At that moment, everyone understood just how far their leader Riku had come. Dragons soared, fireworks thundered, music played, and before the gathered races, Riku took the hands of Shui and Kura and walked together through a magnificent wedding ceremony. Thinkner Valen watched as Riku led Shui and Kura, both in white wedding dresses, and felt a surge of envy deep in her heart. And it wasn't just her vampire queen Sonia, and even Zerlis, flying in the sky, felt envious. As for Fi, aside from her initial sulkiness, she simply watched the scene with calm. After all, She was the first to marry Riku. She was satisfied. Jibril, of course, was the most unfazed. She simply watched with a smile. Rather than a lover, she preferred being Riku's personal maid. After the ceremony, it was time for the wedding night. Under the gaze and blessings of every race, Riku took Shui's hand in his left and Gura's in his right and entered the bridal chamber. As soon as the three entered, soundproofing and all sorts of layered magic activated, ensuring privacy. Humans, werebeasts, vampires, elves, ex machina, everyone ate and drank together for the first time. The giant Dragonia remained nearby, feasting as well. Jibril, the only Fleagle, chatted away, perched atop Zeralissa's back. Because of Riku, even if these races had never gotten along before, now they had to try to communicate. Arguments were limited to a little banter, nothing more. Something like this. Only my husband could accomplish, Faya murmured dreamily as she gazed down from Zeralissa's back. Hee, this is a miracle only Master could create, Jibril replied with a cheerful smile. Faya answered softly. While things outside were boisterous, inside the bridal chamber, Riku gently lifted the veils from Shui and Gura. Shui, you're so adorable. Gura, you look beautiful, Riku said with a smile. I'm happy when you say that, Riku. Shui looked straight into his eyes, her face flushing red. Geez, Riku, you really know how to flatter girls, Gura rolled her eyes. I'm just telling the truth. And speaking of our wedding night, there's only one thing left to do. Riku grinned, eyeing Shui and Gura up and down like prey. I don't mind, since it's our wedding night. But maybe we should take turns? All three of us at once is a bit. Gura, unusually shy, avoided his gaze, her face bright red. Hey, what are you saying? If we're marrying together, we'll do it together. Once I've got you in my hands, don't think about escaping. At this, Riku finally revealed his fangs, flashing a wicked grin as he reached for Shui and Gura. If it's you, Riku, I'm happy, Shui replied without hesitation, far more open than Gura. Hee, Shui is the obedient one. Gura, you should learn from her, Riku said teasingly. Well then, let's begin. Without giving them time to argue, Riku moved right in. In an instant, a mix of surprised cries and unusual sounds filled the room as the song of the three began, leaving much to the imagination. Shui's perfect creation was indeed extraordinary, giving Riku endless satisfaction. Of course, Gura was wonderful too, her figure more than made up for anything Shui lacked. Each had their own advantages. The wedding night battle raged from midnight until dawn. Gura, just a normal human, couldn't keep up and passed out long before Riku and Shui, who, as an untiring ex machina, seemed unstoppable. Only when daylight approached did they finally settle down, drifting into deep sleep together. The wild wedding night was at last peaceful. Chapter 52. It wasn't until noon that Riku, Shui, and Gura finally emerged from the bridal chamber. Master, out so soon? I thought you'd sleep until evening. Jibril teased, beaming as she approached. Faya followed close behind. That comment made Gura blush and avert her gaze, unable to look Jibril or Faya in the eye. Jibril was just Riku's maid, although an unusual one, she was easy to face. But Faya was the first to marry Riku, and she was also Riku's older sister. When you thought about it, the relationships among the three were quite complicated. Shui, on the other hand, just held Riku's hand sweetly, her face the picture of happiness. Shui, just because I let you have husband last night doesn't mean I'll let go for good, Faya said, coming up to hug Riku's other arm, pouting at Shui. Faya, let's all get along. I'm satisfied just being at Riku's side, Shui replied with a gentle smile. Faya was caught off guard, she had expected Shui to compete with her. After a brief pause, Faya broke into a sweet smile and nodded, her tail wagging rapidly. Seeing that no dramatic love triangle was unfolding, Riku nodded in satisfaction. Gura, too, glanced at Faya with curiosity and nodded to herself. No wonder Riku liked this girl so much. Her personality really was wonderful. Hee, sorry to interrupt the newlyweds, but the dwarves are still waiting for you, Master, Jibril chimed in with a grin. The dwarves? Yesterday's guests are still here? Riku asked in surprise. He'd called all the races together for his wedding, but everyone was busy, getting ready for the final battle. In truth, the grand wedding was an indulgence on his part. Logically, everyone should have hurried back this morning. The vampires left with their queen Sonia, and Thinkner Valen from the elves also left. Zeralis had urgent business and departed with the Dragonia. The Ex Machina didn't leave, they have no fixed home. But the dwarves said they have something to report to you, so they stayed. Jibril gave a full report on the movements of the major races. I see, Riku nodded, realizing what might be going on. Shui, Jibril, Faya, you three go and explore a bit. Gura, Come with me, this concerns you, Riku said, focusing his gaze on Kura. Me? Okay. Kura pointed at herself, puzzled, then nodded. Riku led her to the meeting room, where the dwarf commander and several high-ranking dwarves were waiting quietly. Moments later, Riku entered with Kura. Lord Riku, Lady Kura, please forgive us for disturbing you. The dwarf commander and his officers all stood up and bowed respectfully as the two entered. This left Kura feeling a bit strange. High-ranking dwarves bowing to humans, such a thing was unheard of. Riku simply held Kura's hand and sat at the head of the table. Is the Izmecha finished? You guys work fast, Riku said with a slight smile. As expected of Lord Riku, you figured it out right away, the dwarf commander replied, a look of awe on his face. With the blueprints you provided, we did indeed manufacture the Izmecha. Only humans can pilot them. They can automatically draw energy from their surroundings for power storage. Based on our assessment, they're only slightly weaker than our aerial battleships, the dwarf commander explained. Not bad. Riku smiled. Anything produced by the system was bound to be high quality. These meshs were nothing like the oldest models, which would have been junk in this world. The system's version was far more advanced, especially in terms of energy sources. They could even evolve through conscious will. Even Riku didn't know their ultimate limits. Izmecha? Kura asked in confusion. Riku explained the Iz concept to her, and in an instant, Kura's eyes sparkled, part curiosity, part excitement. With such technology, humans could hold their heads high. Maybe there wouldn't be more wars in the future, but humanity's weakness was a fact. No single person, even Riku, could make the whole race strong. But with this, they wouldn't have to worry about being looked down upon anymore. Kura, since the Izmechas have been developed, I'd like you to lead several hundred of our most talented people to the dwarves to learn the technology, Riku said with a smile. Okay. Kura nodded vigorously. The dwarves had no complaints about this. The designs had been provided by Riku anyway. Although only humans could use these meshs for now, the dwarves might gain inspiration to create their own models. It was mutually beneficial. With the decision made, Riku selected several hundred humans. Under Kura's leadership, he teleported them all to the dwarves' Iron City. Seeing the industrial metropolis, everyone was stunned. But after the initial shock, excitement and curiosity took over. They knew what this meant, it was a chance for humanity to rise. And with Riku's connection, they had nothing to fear, the dwarves would teach them respectfully. With Kura's matter settled, Riku set his sights on the location of the final diamond chest. That was the Demon Lord's lair, no doubt filled with fiends and the strongest Demon Lord. Not that it mattered to Riku. He just wanted to open the last diamond chest. In 2 months, he'd launch a full assault on the Fleugle's headquarters, Avonheim, for the final battle with the God of War. Accompanied by Shui, Drumroll, and Fia, Riku made for the Demon King's lair, ready to wipe them all out. As the 4 of them arrived, a mad, earth-shaking roar split the sky. Ru'ar. With a deafening, earth-shaking roar, the entire mountain range trembled and split open. Then, a colossal being appeared before Riku and the others. It was a black, turtle-shaped monster. Roughly the size of a medium-sized island, it radiated an oppressive presence so intense that even the air seemed to solidify around it. So this is the strongest demon, ya? It looks terrifying. It even feels stronger than the Dragonia, Drumroll said in awe, gazing down at the creature. According to my analysis, the Demon Lord's energy is indeed higher than the Dragonia's. But it's not as agile, Shui said, her eyes flickering as she finished her assessment. It's so huge, I honestly have no idea how to even fight something like that, Fia said, clutching her head in frustration. Riku didn't say a word, he just frowned and stared at the Demon Lord below. It seemed the diamond chest was inside this thing. As expected, he'd have to take down this monster. Ru'ar. At that moment, the turtle-shaped Demon Lord let out another roar, its red eyes fixed on Riku. Suddenly, a red light began flashing all over its body. A powerful spirit reaction erupted, and countless dense beams of red energy shot skyward, aiming for Riku and the others. The 4 of them dodged one after another. Master, can we use this big monster as a training dummy? Drumroll asked, smiling hopefully. Fia and Shui both looked over too, battle lust in their eyes. Fine, just don't get reckless, Riku agreed after a brief thought. Since the map was on their side, there was no way for this thing to escape. It wouldn't hurt to let the girls test their strength. As soon as Riku gave permission, Shui, Fia, and Drumroll all got excited. An epic battle broke out instantly, shaking the heavens and earth. Waves of energy flooded the battlefield as Drumroll and Shui unleashed heavenly smites one after another. Normally, when a Fleugel used heavenly smite, they would lose their power and revert to a childlike state, but the current Drumroll, one of the strongest beings aside from the Dragonia, no longer had to worry about such drawbacks. As for Shui, She needed even less concern. Fia, meanwhile, entered blood destruction mode. Unlike before, this time her hair didn't turn red, nor did red patterns appear on her face. Instead, her hair became silver and a silver aura wrapped around her body, making her look beautiful and strong. Her power was now on par with Drumroll's. But Fia's raw strength could only shake the Demon Lord and create a few cracks, it couldn't break its defense. Drumroll and Shui's heavenly smites could only blast off bits of the shell, causing no real damage. This left all three girls frustrated. Meanwhile, the Demon Lord's attacks, though powerful, were too slow for the nimble trio to be hit, leaving them shaken but unharmed. So this is the strongest Demon Lord. That defense is insane, Riku muttered gravely. The Demon Lord was a mutated phantasma. If the strongest Demon Lord was this terrifying, then even Riku, at his current level, would have to use his balance breaker and the fifth gate combined just to seriously injure it, maybe not even kill it. And compared to this, the top-tier Phantasma Fortress of Vonheim, used by the Flügel, must be even more monstrously powerful. Yet Vonheim was merely the servant of the god of war. It's truly a road of carnage, Riku said, a twisted smile appearing. But that's what makes it fun. When it came to Phantasma, Riku did have a trump card, Void Zero Protection, the ultimate technique of the elf creator Kanath, specifically designed to counter Phantasma. It combined the power of 108 sorcerers enough to destroy several Phantasma in a single blow. Maybe it couldn't destroy the highest tier Phantasma, but what about 2, 3, 4, or even 5 at once? Alright, Drumroll, Shui, Fia, that thing's defense is too much for you. Leave it to me, Riku said suddenly. Fine. I get it, Fia pouted, unhappy to step aside. It's seriously hard enough to make me speechless. Even more frustrating than the Dragonia, Drumroll grumbled. Sorry, Shui said, returning to Riku's side, looking apologetic. She really wanted to help him. It's not your fault, blame it on that thing being way too tough, Riku said, stepping into the air. So let me take care of it. Hearing this, the three girls obediently retreated. The Demon Lord fixed its gaze on Riku, letting out a warning roar. Until now, it hadn't paid much attention to the three insects. They were strong, but only enough to cause minor pain. Riku, however, exuded a lethal danger. Seeing Riku ignore it, the Demon Lord could no longer restrain its rage. It began gathering a massive amount of energy in its mouth, the resulting destructive force shaking both sky and earth and spreading cracks in all directions. And this was only the build-up, the attack hadn't even begun yet. Balance breaker, Riku said indifferently. Scarlet armor covered his body, his strength soaring to a terrifying level. Fifth gate, gate of limit, open. Instantly, blue-green flames enveloped him, merging with his red spiritual power. Ru'uar. Sensing Riku's escalating aura, the Demon Lord could no longer hold back. It unleashed its ultimate attack. A red-black energy cannon shot across the sky, aiming straight for Riku. Useless struggle. Riku showed no concern, gathering a terrifying power of his own. A scarlet beam entwined with blue flames exploded out, colliding with the red-black cannon in midair. Boom. A terrifying thunderclap rang out as the two energies collided, the space between them shattering like glass. But compared to Riku's might, the Demon Lord didn't stand a chance. His attack instantly overwhelmed the energy cannon. Splat. The next instant, Riku's attack pierced the Demon Lord's body and detonated inside. Boom. With a deafening explosion, a shockwave as strong as a Category 12 typhoon tore the Demon Lord's island-sized body to pieces, devastating everything for millions of meters around. And this was with Riku restraining his energy, focusing on penetration rather than wide-scale destruction. Otherwise, the Star Grail would have had to show up to clean up the mess again. Chapter 53. While shielding themselves from the shockwave, Shui, Fia, and Drumroll all stared wide-eyed, feeling a bit defeated. They had fought with everything they had, yet couldn't break through the Demon Lord's defenses. Then Riku acted, and instantly finished it off. Ugh, I thought I'd close the gap with husband, but it's only getting wider. Fia said in a dejected tone. Because he's Riku, Shui murmured quietly. Should I say as expected of master? He's gotten even stronger. Drumroll sighed. In their memories, Riku had to struggle desperately to beat the Dragonia. But in just this short time, he'd one-shot a Demon Lord whose strength was even greater than the Dragonia's and whose defense was simply monstrous. Of course, that didn't mean the Demon Lord completely outclassed the Dragonia, it was just stronger in raw power and defense. When it came to agility and trickery, the Dragonia was in another league. But it was precisely because of that the three girls were so shocked. To one-shot the strongest Demon Lord with a single attack. That level of strength was overwhelming. Honestly, I didn't expect this either, Riku said with an innocent look as he cancelled his balance breaker and 8 gates. He truly hadn't anticipated this. He thought using Balance Breaker plus the Gate of Limit would at most severely injure the Demon Lord, not kill it instantly. It seemed the fusion with the Divine Saiyan bloodline really had boosted his power a lot. It wasn't just his strength, it was his endurance, too. Previously, after using Balance Breaker plus the Gate of Limit, he'd be exhausted. Now, he felt fine, there was no sense of weakness. And his body didn't split open like it had after annihilating the Gigant tribe. Humphrey, I don't believe it. Husband, stop trying to comfort me, I'm not that fragile. Fia pouted, sulking. Drumroll just smiled. She had a contract with Riku when he grew stronger, so did she. She just hadn't expected him to get this strong. As for Shui, she simply shook her head, not saying much. Riku teleported down into the crater. Ding. Broken Demon Lord corpse detected. Recyclable. Value, 200,000 exchange points. Recycle? Recycle, Riku said, touching his nose. Obviously, the full Demon Lord would have been worth much more, but it was simply unrealistic to defeat an enemy of that level and keep the body intact. Ding. Recycle successful. Master's remaining exchange points, 340,000, satisfied, Riku nodded and immediately placed his hand on the diamond chest. With a click, the radiant diamond chest popped open. Ding. Congratulations, Master. You have opened a diamond chest and received another cosmology, from problem children are coming from another world? Is the gift held by protagonist Izai Oisakamaki. It allows the user to unleash the Aurora Pillar, an attack that pierces the sky and shatters the stars, a guaranteed one-hit kill. So it's actually Izai another cosmology? As a trump card, this is definitely powerful, Riku's eyes widened in satisfaction. This item would be a top-tier treasure, even in the little garden, extremely rare and precious. Riku, did you get something good again? Shui came over, peering left and right, even flipping Riku's hand over out of curiosity. Yeah, you'll get to see it in action one day, Riku said with a mysterious smile, patting Shui and Fia's heads. Oh. Hearing this, both Shui and Fia nodded obediently, while Drumroll's eyes burned with fanatic excitement, as if she wanted to dissect Riku on the spot. With everything settled, Riku led the three girls home. In the blink of an eye, 2.5 months passed. During those 2 months, Riku didn't try to increase his power any further, but focused on perfecting his control over his abilities. He also spent time studying the pseudo-star map creation and other cosmology. Of course, he also enjoyed traveling around with Shui, Fia, and Drumroll and from time to time, visited the elves to learn necessary magic from Thinknervalen. Naturally, it also meant some romantic time with Thinknervalen as a reward for her hard work on Void Zero protection, which only made her more diligent, leaving a good impression on Riku. Worth noting, Riku also visited the vampires and spent time with Sonia, rewarding her for her diligent work with some of his blood. He may have overdone it that time, biting had always felt a bit lewd to him, and with no other girls around, he didn't hold back with Sonia, the queen who'd given herself over to him entirely. Even her fangs weren't a problem, the sensation was truly something. What intrigued Riku most was how Sonia offered no resistance, but instead fully surrendered to him. Riku liked all kinds of girls, but if someone resisted, he wouldn't force things unless under special circumstances. During this period, Riku also checked in with the dwarves, learning the secret behind his mecha cores, and spent time with Gura. Of course, after being caught with Sonia last time, Shui and Drumroll came along this time. With their help, he no longer had to worry about Gura being unable to keep up with his vigor. These 2.5 months were truly fulfilling, and Riku enjoyed every minute. But all things must come to an end. When the time was up, every plan had been perfectly carried out, and it was time to launch the all-out offensive that would decide the planet's fate. A battle-ready atmosphere spread everywhere, making every race nervous as they anxiously awaited the outcome. Now, in the high-tech command center of the dwarves, a group of familiar faces had gathered. At the head was, of course, Riku. Standing behind him was Drumroll, now his maid. Seated in order were, Shui, full connection command unit of the Ex Machina, Hatsu's Fia, princess of the Werebeasts, Gura, the human representative, Thinknervalen, the full proxy of the elves and also Riku and Fia's maid, Sonia, queen of the vampires and Riku's subordinate, and finally, dwarven commander David. Representatives of the lower races were not invited to the Adi Alliance. The Dragonia, because of their size, did not come, and besides, they had a crucial task, to launch the opening strike. Is it finally about to begin? Hatsu's Fia murmured. The battle that will decide our fate. Everyone else turned to Riku, as if waiting for his command. Then, let's begin. The final chapter of this war, Riku said from the command seat, gazing at the large screen with a deep voice. This made everyone's faces grow serious, their eyes fixed on the display. Commence operation. With Riku's order, the screen changed. Led by Reginlif and Zerlis, 30 white dragons and 4 black dragons soared in from the distance, flying toward the gigantic whale-shaped fortress in the sky. That was the true body of Avonheim. The massive spirit energy of the Dragonia was impossible for the Fleagle to overlook. They were all shocked, eyes filled with killing intent as they focused on the approaching dragons. Meow, so you finally come? Those who dare challenge the dignity of my master, Azrael said coldly, eyes fixed on the incoming dragon swarm. Reginlif the wise dragon, have you really become a human's lapdog? Azrael's voice echoed through the sky. Hey? Lapdog. I've seen the possibilities within him, possibilities enough to overturn everything. Besides, there's a deep grudge between our Dragonia and your kind, the Reginlif roared in return. Attack. Without another word, Reginlif gave the order. Instantly, Zurlis and the other dragons behind him began charging energy in their mouths. Damn. Defend. Noticing this, Azrael furiously ordered a defense. In a flash, Avonheim shimmered with a barrier, and with the support of 500 Fleagle, it activated its shield. The next moment, led by Reginlif, the dragons unleashed their breath attacks. Dozens of blazing dragon breaths ripped through the air, slamming into Avonheim's shield. Ripples spread across the barrier as the entire Avonheim shook. The terrifying energy destabilized the surrounding space, cracks appearing in midair. But still, the barrier held. While Reginlif was a force to be reckoned with, the Fleagle also had Avonheim itself. Their defense at headquarters was no trivial matter. Counterattack. Azrael ordered with bloodlust. 500 Fleagle immediately moved. With Avonheim's protection, they could take the offensive. Even if it took 10 Fleagle to kill a single Dragonia, they had numbers on their side, 500 Fleagle against 34 dragons. While the enemy included Reginlif, they had Avonheim to keep him at bay. The horn of war sounded. Explosions and chaos filled the sky. Just as Azrael expected, the attacking Dragonia were quickly suppressed. Their annihilation was only a matter of time. Second unit, move out. Watching the scene on the screen, Riku remained utterly calm, his voice icy. Then, Master, I'll be going, Jibril said elegantly. Master, I'm off as well, Thinknervalen said, face serious. With that, Jibril took Thinknervalen and vanished from the command room. Elsewhere, a combined force of elves and vampires appeared on the far side of the battlefield, moving toward the fight. The clash between the Dragonia and Fleagle sent shockwaves everywhere, making it tough for them to advance. Fortunately, the vampires' stealth powers kept them hidden from the Fleagle. Suddenly, Jibril and Thinknervalen appeared at the front of the group, deploying a barrier to shield everyone from the aftermath of the battle. Let's begin. The second step of annihilation, Thinknervalen said, taking a deep breath, her eyes flashing with resolve. For Riku, for her only master, she couldn't allow any failure. Understood. Hearing this, all the soldiers responded with grim determination. Then the elves' secret weapon was brought out. Under Thinknervalen's command, they prepared to launch the Void Zero Protection, a god-tier technique also known as the Nemesis of Phantasma. It was the perfect attack for breaking Avonheim's defense. For this moment, Thinknervalen had pushed her body to its limits, barely resting, and had managed to create 5 Void Zero Protections. Sorcerers, ready. Activation complete. Launch in 20 seconds. Countless magic circles appeared beneath the elves' feet. Ignoring the cost, they poured in their spirit energy, with Thinknervalen directing operations. Meanwhile, the other elves focused on defense. The vampires provided cover. And most importantly, Jibril stood at the front as their main protector. Azrael, there's a powerful spirit reaction to the east, likely, Void Zero Protection. But the elves' creator was supposed to have been destroyed by our lord. Why? A Fleagle reported in alarm. What? Azrael, locked in fierce combat with the Dragonia, was stunned. The geometric halo above her head spun rapidly as she used her authority to scan the area. Even with the vampire's stealth, the energy signature from firing 5 Void Zero Protections at once couldn't be hidden, not even if the shadow god Gagras intervened. So Azrael instantly saw everything in that area. Little Jibril. First, she noticed Jibril, then saw the glowing orbs in her pupil's contract. They were Void Zero Protections. Those arrogant forest monkeys had managed to recreate their creator's godly technique. Azrael's heart sank. Kafi, lead the 9th wing and destroy the elves and vampires, stop them from launching Void Zero Protection. As for little Jibril, if she gets in the way, cripple her, then bring her back for treatment later, Azrael commanded coldly. Void Zero Protection was the nemesis of Phantasma. They absolutely couldn't let even one reach Avonheim, let alone 5. Understood. The Fleagle named Kafi led 9 others, flying toward the elves and vampires. Looks like we've been spotted. But Azrael, the me of today, isn't the same as before, Drumroll said, sensing Azrael's gaze. Little Drumroll, get out of the way. We're going to wipe out these pests, a cold, murderous voice rang out from above as space rippled. With a spatial ripple, 10 Flugel appeared overhead, led by a chillingly aloof one. The elves and vampires were alarmed, nerves on edge. Even one Flugel could wipe them out, let alone 10. Kathy, is it? Let's get started, this is your only chance. Drumroll looked up at her old acquaintance with indifference. For my master's sake, even against you, I won't show mercy. Little Drumroll, you've really fallen. We'll have to cripple you and bring you back, Kathy replied angrily. Attack. All 10 Flugel gathered their power at once. Drumroll only smiled, the geometric halo behind her head spinning rapidly. A sturdy barrier enveloped the elves and vampires behind her. Little Drumroll. In Avonheim, Azrael watched her adopt a defensive stance with a complicated expression. She couldn't understand why Drumroll would betray the god of war, choose a human, and even turn against her own kin and creator for that human. The Flugel were created to hunt other races and deliver the Star Grail to their king. Why this betrayal now? Annihilation operation, 3rd unit move out, Riku commanded calmly, watching the screen from the dwarves' high-tech command room. Then, husband, I'm off, Faya said, standing up and smiling sweetly before activating Shambhala, vanishing in a flash of purple light. At the same time, 10 massive flying warships appeared west of Avonheim, radiating intense pressure. E-bombs, divine core bombs, charged and ready. All units, prepare for launch and defense. Came the excited yet serious voices across the warships. The dwarves' huge cannons gleamed with terrifying energy. All around the dwarves were countless humans equipped with mecha, guarding the perimeter, along with the dwarves' special forces. The E-bomb was the dwarves' secret weapon, created with the combined power of several races. They had produced 5, and with the stockpiled ones, now had 10 in total. As the name implied, if Void Zero Protection was the nemesis of Phantasma, then the E-bomb was the nemesis of the god races. It had a special damage bonus against the gods and could target their divine core, their very essence. The divine core was as vital to the gods as a heart is to a human. If a god lost their core, they'd lose their power, or even cease to exist, unable to take physical form ever again. This was Riku's second trump card and a reason for bringing the dwarves into the alliance. I've been waiting for this moment for so long, fighting side by side with my husband, dragging the god of war down from his throne, Faya murmured on the central warship, her hair and kimono fluttering in the wind, eyes sparkling. And what a sight it is, she added, smiling down at the humans in the Izmeco below. Who would have thought, besides Riku himself, that humans could be one of the main fighting forces in this great war? Even if still a bit green, they were already quite reliable for defense. This was humanity's miracle. And it was Riku who brought about this miracle. Report. There's a massive spirit reaction to the west, the dwarves flying warships. A Flugel shouted in Avonheim. Why worry about that scrap metal? Azrael said darkly. While the dwarves' ships were strong, any Flugel could easily destroy them. But the energy signatures from each warship are as powerful as Void Zero Protection, and there are twice as many of them. The Flugel reported, face ashen. What? Azrael's expression also darkened, the murderous light in her heterochromatic eyes almost tangible. No wonder that human pulled the dwarves and elves into his alliance. Those insect races had each managed to create such terrifying ultimate weapons. 10th Wing, sortie. Wipe them out before they can attack. Azrael ordered angrily. For the glory of their lord, they absolutely could not lose here. Understood. In a flash, 10 Flugel set out, teleporting straight to the dwarves' fleet. Boom. Without hesitation, they launched their strongest attacks short of Heaven's strike at the warships. But to their shock, their attacks were blocked. A crystalline barrier completely absorbed the strikes, leaving only ripples and shock waves. Humans? How can mere humans pilot dwarven weapons? They suddenly noticed about 500 humans in his mecha, arms outstretched, forming an energy shield in all directions. It left the Flugel in turmoil. 10 Flugel, huh? Only 10 seconds left, so let me entertain you, Faya said, her blue hair fluttering, eyes mocking. In the next moment, her hair turned silver, and strange markings appeared on her body. A gap opened in the barrier, perfectly timed. Faya shot out like a cannon, the air around her compressing into a shock wave. Thud. Sensing something amiss, the lead Flugel instinctively put up a defense. Splat. But they couldn't react in time, the barrier shattered with a single punch from Faya, sending the leader hurtling away like a meteor. One punch, and seriously wounded. She's a were beast? The remaining Flugel were thrown into chaos. Are humans so strong? A were beast able to one-shot their captain? What was happening to the world? Her speed is terrifying, Don't stop moving. Find an opening and take her out, we must finish the mission, their leader said. The Flugel's combat skills were indeed formidable, they weren't afraid of death. They sprang into action, teleporting and surrounding Faya in a coordinated assault. You want to destroy me? Not possible. I promised my husband I'd finish this mission perfectly, Faya smiled, her eyes sharp as she replied coldly. While Faya was locked in a fierce battle, Riku calmly watched the screen and issued his orders. Shui, 4th unit, deploy. Leave it to me, Riku. Shui smiled softly and instantly vanished from the room. A spatial ripple appeared behind the Dragonia, and in a flash, 1200 Ex Machina units materialized in their linked formation. Open the cannon, pseudo-heavenly smite. Shui stood at the front, coldly carrying out the command. In an instant, all the Ex Machina began charging up, each forming a pitch-black sphere. This was the Ex Machina's analyzed version of Heavenly Smite. Its power was only about 70% of the real thing, but with so many, it was a barrage that would be nearly impossible to defend against. Wait for my command. We'll launch the attack together, Shui ordered. Understood. All the Ex Machina nodded. Damn it. Even those scrap metal Ex Machina are joining in? Inside Avonheim, Azrael's face finally twisted in frustration. A deep sense of helplessness welled up in her heart. Most of the Flugel's fighting power was being held up by the Dragonia, led by Regenlif. Now, against 1200 Ex Machina, they simply couldn't spare the forces to respond. And when Azrael looked at the other fronts, her face darkened even more. Faya was taking on 10 Flugel at once, suppressing all of them. The dwarves' secret weapon looked fully charged and ready to fire. On another front, things were slightly better for the Flugel, since Jibril still refused to attack her kin, only defending. But even so, Azrael was left speechless. Jibril had grown too strong. Even with just her barrier, Kafi and the others couldn't break through. Suddenly, a new surge of power appeared, and Azrael's heart sank even further. Regenlif was actually preparing to unleash Incinerating Roar. The other Dragonia were retreating in order, charging up their own dragon breaths as they fell back, clearly planning to unleash their full force. What annoyed Azrael most was that Zerlis, an old acquaintance among the Dragonia, had also grown much stronger, blocking any Flugel pursuit. The Regenlif's Incinerating Roar, more than 30 dragon breaths, 10 E-bombs, and 5 Void Zero protections, all these attacks combined could overturn everything. Forget the enemy, everyone, fall back and defend. Full defense. For our master, we absolutely cannot be defeated here. Azrael shouted anxiously. As Azrael's order rang out, the Flugel who had been locked in combat with the Dragonia instantly used spatial shift to return to Avonheim. Jibril, you've gotten stronger again, Kafi said with a complex look before leading her squad away. Kafi, Azrael. My master's power is beyond your imagination, Jibril murmured as she watched them leave. Everything will proceed just as master has planned. In the end, she couldn't bring herself to attack her sisters, she only defended. Master promised me, once it's all over, he'll spare the remaining Flugel. Jibril looked to the sky, murmuring. Mission failed. Retreat. Fall back and defend. On Faya's side, the 10 battered Flugel looked at her with frustration, but finally retreated. For my master and that idiot Flugel, I really went easy on you, Hatsus Faya said, releasing her blood destruction state. Void Zero protection, fire. Over on the elves' side, Thinkner Valen opened her eyes wide and raised both hands, shouting the command. In an instant, 5 glowing green spheres, surging with terrifying power, rocketed into the sky toward Avonheim. E-bombs, launch. On the dwarves' side, the humanist defenders dropped their energy shields as the dwarf commander excitedly gave the order. In a flash, blazing energy pillars formed. Massive spirit bombs wrapped in flames shot rapidly toward Avonheim. Artosh, this time, your defeat is certain. Regenlif's golden eyes shone as he unleashed Incinerating Roar. Immediately after, over 30 dragon breaths followed. Blazing Incinerating Roar and dragon breaths ripped through the sky, converging on Avonheim. Pseudo-heavenly smite, full barrage. Shui's eyes flashed as she gave the order. She was the first to hurl a spear far more powerful than any Flugel's heavenly smite. 1,200 heavenly smites turned into streaks of light, shooting toward Avonheim. All the races present stared wide-eyed, ready to witness a legendary moment. In those final seconds before the all-out attack, Azrael and the Flugel at Avonheim felt only despair. Even with Avonheim's defensive support, they couldn't withstand all these overwhelming attacks. You foolish ants. You're not the challengers I awaited. So disappear. From deep within Avonheim, the god of war, Artosh, opened his golden eyes. His voice boomed across the heavens, filled with disdain for all life. Our lord. Upon hearing this, Azrael and the other Flugels' faces filled with joy and shame. Their master was finally intervening. To them, it was an honor even in defeat to witness their lord's might once more after 1,000 years. Channel all power to Lord Artosh. Show these insects that our master is beyond their reach. Azrael commanded urgently. Instantly, countless Flugel unleashed their power into the sky, pouring everything they had into one attack. In doing so, every last Flugel reverted to child form. Divine Strike. Seated on his throne, the god of war Artosh raised his hand. A surge of energy absorbed all the Flugel's power, swelling rapidly. In the next moment, a blinding golden pillar of light shot down from the heavens, shattering the surrounding space so completely it could not be restored. The power was so overwhelming that even the highest races were left breathless. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the divine strike and the combined might of all the races clashed. The deafening explosion that followed shook the entire planet. Chapter 54 An incinerating roar, 34 dragon breaths, 10 E-bombs, 5 void zero protections, and 1,200 pseudo-heavenly smites, stacking all these attacks together created an unimaginable force. Even Riku, without using his trump cards, could never withstand it. The next instant, the divine strike, powered by the strength of roughly 500 Flugel plus the god of war Artosh himself, clashed head-on with all those combined attacks. It was like several blazing suns colliding, a storm of terrifying energy engulfing everything, making everyone present feel utterly insignificant. And in the end, what filled every race with despair was that even this ultimate barrage, filled with every trump card they had, was suppressed by the divine strike and slowly forced down toward the ground. So this is the god of war? They're both divine miracles, but the difference is this great? Think Nervalin muttered, her face pale. Void Zero protection was the miracle of her people's creator. Now, with 5 Void Zero protections and all the other attacks combined, they were still being suppressed. If these were all divine miracles, how could the gap be so vast? She couldn't understand, and neither could anyone else. Artosh, you're still just as overpowering. Reginlef, breathing heavily even after using incinerating roar, gave a bitter smile. So this is the opponent my husband and I are challenging? He really is terrifying. Fia murmured. She closed her eyes and then opened them, her gaze full of trust. But, my husband will never lose. Jibril, meanwhile, remained perfectly calm. That old man was unmatched in raw power, without a doubt the strongest. But to Jibril, that was all. In every other way, he couldn't compare to her current master. Riku, it's up to you now, Zerlis murmured. Master. Sonia whispered, her expression dazed. You'll succeed, won't you? Shui and her ex machina units, however, remained perfectly composed, unfazed by the sight. Aside from those women who had spent a lot of time at Riku's side, the rest, especially high-level figures like the dwarf commander, felt nothing but despair. After gathering so many ultimate attacks, they still couldn't win. This was just too unfair. To the god of war, perhaps they really were nothing but insects, arrogant bugs who dreamed of challenging a god, foolishly unaware of their own limits. A wave of fear swept through many hearts. Hee, that's the price for challenging our lord, Azrael, now reverted to child form, sneered. She'd been frustrated by being on the defensive, but now felt utterly relieved. Most of the other Flugel children felt the same, watching with fanatical eyes as if eager to witness the annihilation of the ants below in their master's divine light. Shui, it's up to you, Riku said calmly in the command room, his tone light as he sent her a message. Riku, this time, I won't lose again. Shui's eyes flashed, and she nodded fiercely. All units move out. With a wave of her small hand, she gave the order. All the ex machina vanished from their spots, reappearing at key points around the energy collision, surrounding the terrifying, space-shredding blast from every angle. Activate. Analyze. Control. A massive geometric halo appeared behind Shui, her eyes glinting with terrifying data as she ran simulations. Before her, a small device buried in the ground long ago rose into the air. It wasn't just Shui. The ex machina at every position had halos behind them, controlling similar devices. In an instant, a web of light large enough to cover the entire battlefield formed, seizing the energy above, weaving, fusing, and compressing it. Even with the entire evolved ex machina force, controlling such a vast power was almost impossible. The analysis was overwhelming. Shui. Control difficulty, unable to analyze, all the ex machina reported, mechanical headpieces flashing as they sent their status. If it's for Riku's victory, then what you call impossible, I'll break through it myself, Shui muttered with determination, staring up at the tangled, blackening mass of energy that threatened to explode and destroy everything. Her internal source of machinery flashed madly, cracks even appearing, but Shui never flinched, pushing herself beyond her limits, no, breaking her limits. She actually did it. Regenliff stared at the change in the sky, stunned. The Ex Machina. What an incredible race. It would be more accurate to say it's Shui's will that created this miracle, Zurlis added. Regenliff fell silent. Willpower, huh? Wonderful. Noticing the change, Thinknervalen, Sonia, Kara, the dwarf commander, and all the Audia Alliance erupted in joy. Shui. Thea nodded in admiration. It really makes one envious, Jibril murmured, her tone unreadable. Riku's trust in Shui was pure, and Shui, in turn, created miracles for Riku. No one could intrude on that special bond between them. How can this be? Even our lord's attack. Azrael and the other Fleagle stared in disbelief, shocked and horrified. Their lord was supposed to be invincible, absolutely beyond the reach of insects. And yet now, the Ex Machina had seized even his attack, controlling all that energy. Impossible. No, this was all premeditated. They, and even their lord, had been played right into the enemy's hands. Azrael froze, an image of that human flashing through her mind. She ground her teeth. Everything had been planned out in advance. The enemy had considered every possibility. They'd drained the Fleagle's power, even their lord's, making him use up most of his energy. It's time to finish this. I'll be right back. Riku stood from his seat, eyes shining with fighting spirit as he looked at the screen. Everything had gone perfectly, just as planned. Only one thing remained to finish off the god of war Artosh once and for all. With that, Riku's figure vanished from the command room. Now, it was time for the kings to face each other, king against king, in the battle that would decide victory and defeat. The Star Grail is the prize of this divine war, and it will choose the most suitable master, the so-called strongest god. That's why, when the Star Grail appears, the god of war cannot be allowed to live. Only by killing the strongest Artosh can Riku truly take control of the Grail. But by sheer combat ability, if Artosh were at full power, even Riku going all out would be uncertain. So, before facing him, Artosh had to be weakened to maximize Riku's chances of victory. At the same time, Riku also needed to ensure he had enough power to pierce through the entire Spirit's corridor. That's why Riku called Shui his most important trump card. Achieving the greatest victory with the smallest price, that was Riku's goal. After vanishing, Riku appeared in the middle of the battlefield and then, with another spatial shift, stepped right into Avonheim. Because so much power had just been expended, getting inside was easy for him. You? The moment Riku entered, Azrael, now in child form, glared at him with murderous eyes. The other childlike Fleagle surrounded him as well. Even with barely a scrap of strength left, they were determined to block this human's path. Trying to stop me? I promised Jibril a few things, but I can still teach you all a lesson, Riku said coldly, completely unfazed by the Fleagle. As he spoke, a powerful surge of magic erupted from him. He had, after all, picked up a few spells from Thinknervalen, plenty good enough to discipline others. Master, may I take care of this instead? A ripple in space, and Jibril appeared in front of Riku, kneeling respectfully. Little Jibril. Azrael's face changed the moment she saw her. I told you to stay put. A maid who doesn't follow orders needs more discipline back home, Riku said, flicking Jibril's smooth forehead. Sorry. Jibril lowered her head in shame, no longer the usual teasing maniac. If not for her, the plan would have been even more perfect. But for the sake of her sisters like Azrael, she pleaded with Riku to spare the Fleagle if possible. In the end, in this life and death struggle, almost zero Fleagle died, only suffered various wounds. And on the Alliance side, there were no deaths at all. That was nothing short of miraculous. This was a battle to decide the fate of the planet, a war for the Star Grail. And yet, not a single life was lost. But her master had managed it. He'd achieved what no one, no god, ever had. That's what you get for being my maid. But since you didn't listen, you'll be getting extra discipline when we get back, Riku said, shaking his head as he turned away. I'll be waiting, Jibril replied with a sweet smile. Little Jibril. You've really fallen, Azrael said with a complex look. Following master is my honor. And it's for your sake as well, Jibril replied, turning to face her sisters with a sigh. We Fleagle do not fear death. To die for Lord Artosh is the greatest honor. No one can be allowed to challenge Lord Artosh's divine might. Azrael said angrily. Azrael, you really don't understand, Jibril murmured. That old man has always been waiting for someone to surpass him. Azrael and the Fleagle were left speechless. Avonheim was a war fortress of immense size, most people would be hopelessly lost inside. But Riku, following his system's map, flew straight for the only rainbow chest. The single rainbow chest is no doubt the God of War's location. Arriving before the Grand Hall, Riku kicked the doors open in a simple, brutal fashion. He strolled inside as if it were his own home, showing not a hint of caution despite being in the enemy's stronghold. Deep in the hall, the god of war, Artosh, sat on his throne. He slowly opened his golden eyes, listening to the echoing footsteps with a faint smile. A few seconds later, Riku appeared before Artosh, and the god smiled as well. Riku, I thought I'd have to wait a while longer, but here you are, so soon. Looks like introductions aren't needed. The rainbow chest was right by Artosh's throne, but Riku didn't even glance at it, meeting Artosh's gaze. I'm here to knock you off your high and mighty pedestal. Ha ha, is that so? Artosh laughed joyfully. Human hero, what do you think it means to be the strongest? Being the strongest means nothing to me, Riku replied flatly. Oh? Hearing this, Artosh's eyes sharpened. The strongest will fall one day, might even be defeated by someone infinitely weaker. So to me, it's meaningless. What I want is victory. Victory that never yields, victory that never loses. Riku's eyes were razor sharp, locked on Artosh like a drawn blade. Victory, huh? Interesting. Then show me, can you seize victory from these hands of the strongest? Artosh's golden eyes gleamed as he slowly stood up. A terrifying aura instantly filled the space, making all of Avonheim tremble as if in awe of its master's divine might. But Riku held his ground and met Artosh's gaze head-on. Balance breaker. Riku's right hand transformed, manifesting the Red Dragon Emperor's gauntlet, activating his balance breaker. Crimson energy surged around him, his aura soaring. But he wasn't done yet. He roared again, 8 gates released. 7th gate, shock gate, open. A wildly violent aura erupted, shaking the mighty hall until it began to collapse, space itself rippling and cracking. Even so, the god of war didn't budge, his eyes blazing with fighting spirit. Then, deep blue flames mingled with crimson energy, encasing Riku's body, his power climbing to its peak. Just standing there, the leaking energy made cracks appear in the air itself, as if even space was screaming in pain. 2 terrifying auras erupted from the depths of Avonheim, locked in a stalemate in the sky, shaking the entire planet, making gods and mortals alike feel utterly insignificant. Even the Regen Lift could only watch in silence. Compared to their own peak, the gap was a whole dimension apart. Shui, Fia, Gibril, Zuralis, Think, Sonia, even Azrael and the other Flugal all felt suffocated. Yet they stared into the depths, wordless, waiting for the greatest battle of the age to explode. So this is your power? Truly astounding. It's hard to imagine you come from the weakest race. Amid the ruins of the Grand Hall, the imposing god of war, Artosh, eyes blazing gold and brimming with battle spirit, spoke with admiration. Huff. Riku could feel his power swelling to the absolute limit, but kept his eyes coldly fixed on Artosh, exhaling softly. Simultaneously unleashing Balance Breaker and a 7th gate, the power was overwhelming, but so was the burden. Riku's body showed signs of breaking apart, yet his super regeneration held it together in a strange balance. Then let's begin. Riku's voice was deep as he spoke. The next instant, Riku vanished from sight, the ground beneath his feet shattering, unable to withstand his power. Boom. In less than a 10,000th of a second, Riku charged straight to Artosh, his fist wreathed in blue and red, hammering toward the god of war. Artosh, ablaze with fighting spirit, met him head-on, their fists crashing together. Space erupted, shattering into fragments. Rings of white smoke burst outward, turning into violent storms that swept away everything. The sound of the shockwave only reached them after their speed far surpassed sound itself. To these two, the speed of sound was as slow as a snail. Fist met fist, and the ground beneath their feet caved in violently. Their terrifying forces devoured each other, neither backing down an inch. Avonheim itself shook madly, as if struck by a magnitude 10 earthquake. Faintly, the fortress seemed to scream. It simply couldn't withstand the might of these two. Even the aftershocks were destroying it from within. Boom. Sensing this, Artosh frowned, his eyes flashing, and increased his strength, blasting Riku far away in a streak of light. Artosh then vanished like a ghost, chasing after Riku. Instantly, 2 beams of light shot from the depths of Avonheim, streaking across the sky for all to see. Yet they were so fast, it was impossible to catch any detail. What a monster. Even after we drain more than half his power, he's still this strong? Riku marveled, feeling his numbed arms. But that's what makes it fun. That's what makes killing a god worth it. He laughed as the god of war rocketed toward him. Steadying himself, Riku shot back at Artosh, and the battle resumed. Boom. 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 Fists met flesh, dull, thunderous sounds echoing across the sky. Their forms were impossible to track, only the rifts left in space by their impacts slowly knitting back together. Riku's armor shattered and reformed, again and again, as he hammered at Artosh. The god of war, heedless of injury, swung back with everything he had. At the very peak of battle, God and man cast aside everything, reduced to the most primal, brutal brawl. Watching this, those with enough power to perceive anything like Zorlus could only stare, stunned by the spectacle. No one, no matter how strong, could come within 100 kilometers of the battlefield. Otherwise, the aftershocks alone would mean instant death. Boom. Suddenly, Riku, wild-eyed, seized on a flaw in Artosh's defense. He flashed in and hammered a fist into Artosh's chest. Artosh's expression darkened as Riku's blow sent him flying, turning him into a fireball streaking for outer space. Yet as he was struck, Artosh landed a blow of his own, sending Riku plummeting like a meteor toward the ground. Boom! It was as if the entire disboard trembled. Where Riku landed, the earth caved in, turning into an infernal abyss. As for Artosh, he'd been blasted all the way into outer space. Gulp. Witnessing the raw, savage violence of this battle, everyone couldn't help but swallow hard. No words could describe the shock. Boom. The next moment, Riku, his armor half shattered, blazed upward in a flare of red and blue light, soaring toward outer space. Artosh was waiting for him there, delighted. The planet itself could not survive their battle. At this point, neither wanted anything to interfere with this duel to the death. They left the planet behind. After only a fleeting glance at the beauty before him, Riku locked his eyes on Artosh again, the heat of battle flaring once more. Haha, I never thought I'd live to see a day like this, Artosh laughed, covered in wounds and looking battered, but still utterly elated. At this point, there's no need for idle talk. If we're going to communicate, let's do it through battle, Riku declared. Agreed. Artosh's face hardened, then he smiled. His aura turned heavy again. He gathered a massive amount of spirit energy in his hand, forming it into a long sword. As Artosh's energy blade appeared, Riku's mouth curved into a grin. With a flash, a gorgeous holy sword Excalibur materialized in his hand. He charged straight at Artosh. The god of war met him with equal enthusiasm. In the next instant, the energy sword and the holy sword clashed, countless flashes of light erupting in the darkness of space. There was no sound in the vacuum, but the shockwaves from their swords sent ripples tearing through outer space, shaking everything. Sword light flashed as two blades clashed furiously, wild energy pouring out and occasionally tearing nearby space rocks apart. Clang. Suddenly, Artosh's energy sword flickered, slicing at Riku's neck from an impossible angle almost impossible to evade. Yet Riku's expression remained calm. He countered with his own blade, thrusting straight for Artosh's chest. Seeing this, Artosh's eyes narrowed. Was Riku really planning to trade wounds? But my sword is faster. Calculating the situation with terrifying speed, Artosh erupted with even greater force, slashing at Riku's neck even faster. Crack. Even the Red Dragon Emperor's armor was sliced like paper, Artosh's blade biting deep into Riku's neck. But to Artosh's shock, Riku took the blow head-on and wasn't injured at all. His powerful sword strike hadn't even scratched Riku's skin. Splurt. At the same time, Riku's Excalibur pierced Artosh's chest. But just as the sword went in, Artosh vanished on the spot, escaping a fatal blow. Excalibur. In the next instant, Riku poured all his strength into the holy sword, roaring as he swung. A towering golden pillar of light erupted, chasing after Artosh, who had just reappeared via teleportation. The beam grew even thicker as it flew, lighting up the planet below and piercing the gray void with an awe-inspiring sight. Ha! Facing Riku's attack, Artosh let out a fierce roar, his body crackling with spirit energy. He punched out, unleashing wild energy straight into the golden pillar. Two torrents of power collided head-on, shaking outer space itself. Nearby planets trembled as their orbits were nudged. Finally, both attacks twisted off course, blasting away to the sides, each striking a distant planet. Boom. The planets struck by Riku and Artosh's attacks exploded into cosmic debris. Gulp. Everyone on disboard noticed the disappearance of two planets, swallowing hard in shock. What was happening in that battle? Everyone, including Shui, Faya, and the rest, was desperate to know. So strong. Riku silently defended against the explosion's aftershock, shaking his head. Even in this state, even with the Holy Sword's boost, his strongest attack had been cancelled out. Wasn't that a bit too strong? It was only thanks to the Leo Sovereign's invulnerability that Artosh had even taken a hit. And this wasn't even Artosh at full power. Ridiculous. Riku, that last attack was impressive. It's been a while since I felt any pressure. Artosh laughed wildly. I am the embodiment of war and the strongest. Even though you've drained most of my power, I grow stronger and recover as I fight. That is my very concept. So, how do you plan to overcome my strength? Artosh's gaze sharpened as he sent his words wrapped in spirit energy. This isn't working. Do I have to risk everything? Riku sighed, realizing the gap between them. The god of war's concept was just too unfair. At these words, Artosh looked delighted, almost as if he was waiting for this moment. 8 gates formation. 8th gate, Death Gate, open. Riku roared, unleashing his trump card. Ignoring his body's limits, he opened all the gates for a true fight to the death, no more holding back. At once, a violently red aura, different from his usual crimson energy, burst from Riku's body. The two reds fused into true crimson, and his power skyrocketed. But as his power soared, his body cracked apart, even his super regeneration couldn't keep up, only barely maintaining the threshold. His skin turned deep crimson, burning hot, blue-white veins bulging, as if he might break apart at any moment. Still, Riku poured out every ounce of strength. He wanted only one thing, to win. To win this fight, no matter what. Pulled by this wild power, cracks appeared in the darkness of space. Even Disboard itself trembled, nearby novas quivering. Artosh kept his eyes fixed on Riku, not interfering, just smiling, pleased. That's it, unleash all your strength. Come, try to defeat me, the strongest, and seize the prize of victory. This aura. On Disboard, Reginlef, weakened, suddenly sensed a familiar presence, his dragon eyes narrowing. This power was the same as when Riku had first defeated him, unforgettable. But the price for using it was grave, possibly life itself. Last time, Riku had a way to recover, but now. And this time, the stacked power was so wild that Reginlef could feel it was like an unfathomable abyss. He couldn't begin to measure it, and the consequences would be dire. Riku's body might not last. I see. So it's come to a life and death struggle. Reginlef's eyes flashed as he murmured. Riku. Shui gazed up, holding a compressed black energy orb in her hands, her eyes full of emotion. Husband. Fia clenched her fists, unable to help herself. The other girls were the same. Master. Jibril kept her gaze fixed on the sky. Behind her, Azrael and the Fleagle watched, eyes complicated. Who would have thought the weakest human could become this powerful? She had to admit, even at his peak, her master couldn't compare. But her master would not lose. Never. Azrael's gaze sharpened once more. Huff. Sorry to keep you waiting. Now, let's start the third round. Riku exhaled deeply and spoke in a calm voice. The power leaking from him was enough to shake the stars. Before Artosh could say a word, Riku vanished from his spot, becoming a crimson meteor streaking toward Artosh. With no air resistance in space, pure speed was magnified to the extreme. In the next instant, Riku appeared before Artosh, launching a punch. Where his fist passed, the void itself collapsed, carrying an unstoppable force. Artosh's expression changed, his pupils contracting sharply, and he barely managed to cross his arms before him. Boom. A dull impact rang out through Artosh's body. His arm caved in at a visible rate, the sound of bones cracking faintly audible. Artosh was sent flying by this overwhelming force, streaking like a meteor through space until he crashed into a distant planet. Rumble. Deafening thunder followed as the planet was gouged out like a bitten apple. At the heart of the crater, a bottomless pit spewed magma, a truly shocking sight. After blasting Artosh away, Riku didn't relax. He instantly teleported, crossing space to land on the devastated planet. Ha ha ha. Incredible, that's the strength I wanted. Artosh burst out of the ground, standing in the void, his right arm hanging, but he laughed wildly. This pain, this thrill of battle, it was exhilarating. This was the joy of battle, the feeling of surpassing the strongest, and wanting to break one's limits. Riku, surrounded by terrifying flames, shot down like a meteor, the fire a product of friction from his extreme speed. Boom. In a flash, Riku was again at Artosh's side, punching with overwhelming force. Artosh responded with a full-strength punch of his own, meeting Riku head-on, refusing to back down. Boom boom. Their fists clashed again, but this time, Artosh was sent flying, his fist swollen and bloody. Blasted away, Artosh became a human cannonball, tearing through sky and earth, shattering mountains, wreaking havoc, finally crashing into the dirt again, causing the planet to shake violently, volcanoes erupting, storms raging, as if the end had come. End it fast, final strike. Riku rasped. This state was beyond anything most could endure, he couldn't hold it much longer. He gathered wild energy, merging it with the Red Dragon Emperor's gauntlet, manifesting Excalibur once more, this time as a blade of light, power pouring into it. The intensity shattered the space around him, revealing black space-time turbulence, the battered planet groaning in protest. Excalibur. Riku roared, bringing the sword down. An overwhelming beam of light blasted toward Artosh. Faced with his life-or-death blow, Artosh neither dodged nor could have dodged, he'd been locked on. I am the god of war, the embodiment of war and the strongest. Artosh faced the oncoming light, his mind racing. The strongest because I am the strongest. In that instant, the divine core within Artosh blazed with power and presence. Far away, in Disport's spirit corridor, Artosh's battle spirit and concept forcibly drew in vast amounts of spirit power, tearing through time and space, restoring him to his peak, even beyond, into a whole new domain. ZZZZT. A jet-black blast of pure energy shot from Artosh's palm, annihilating everything in its path as it flew at the golden beam. Boom. Golden and black beams collided in midair, a heavy sound rang out, space itself being ground to dust, everything turning black, ominous lightning flashing. Space-time turbulence raged, devouring everything, energy, light, everything was swallowed. He can get even stronger? This is the god of war, the strongest god with the strongest concept. Riku felt the pressure mounting, his heart growing heavier. The two forces reached a critical point, unable to remain in balance, they exploded outward. Riku's pupils contracted, he instantly cut off the flow of power and teleported away. At the same time, Artosh didn't hesitate to teleport away from the planet. Boom. The energy exploded, space-time turbulence sweeping across the planet. The whole planet was engulfed in wild energy, bursting apart like a cosmic firework shattered into rubble, scattered across the universe. The shockwave radiated outward, disrupting the orbits of distant planets. Disport, much closer, shook violently, as if struck by a magnitude 12 earthquake. Cracks opened everywhere, hurricanes raged, the world was an apocalyptic scene. Thankfully, there were no weaklings here, although the chaos caused trouble, the organization kept everyone alive. No one had time to worry about anything else, everyone stared up, dazed, knowing another planet had been destroyed. Two monsters. For everyone except Riku's closest, that was the only thought left. Out in the black void, Riku repaired his Red Dragon Emperor's armor, facing the shockwave with a sharp gaze fixed on a distant figure, his eyes brimming with tension, fighting spirit, and madness. Artosh was the same, full of wild joy. In the next instant, man and god vanished without a word. Now, words were useless, the only truth was to slay the other. Boom. 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 Man and god crashed together, their bodies sharpened into the deadliest weapons, their collisions sending shockwaves through the stars. In just 1 second, Riku and Artosh exchanged blows tens of thousands of times, their speed was off the charts. Ha-ah-ah. Riku roared, a colossal punch meeting Artosh's fist, a terrible rift splitting space, and both were blasted away. This time, though, Riku was flung much farther than Artosh. My power's fading. Looks like the strongest wins. Artosh, his body battered and bleeding, laughed wildly, eyes fixed on the weakening Riku. Victory, huh? You're still not quite there. Artosh spoke with both praise and regret. A human could force him to the edge, to break his limits, to reach a new height of strength, an unbelievable feat. Ha ha ha, the strongest, huh? If you can break through and become the strongest again, then I'll surpass that strength and defeat you. Even facing death, Riku laughed boldly. Amazing courage. Then show me how you will surpass the limits of my concept of the strongest. Artosh was full of admiration. He vanished, reappearing before Riku, a fist strong enough to shatter a star hammering down, holding nothing back. ZZZZT. At that instant, a surge of pure dragon energy exploded from within Riku. Even Artosh, in that moment, was shaken. But as the god of war, Artosh had no fear, gathering all his strength for one final punch. Boom. But Artosh's punch never landed, it was stopped by an invisible barrier, meters from Riku. The force and energy backfired, sending Artosh flying. What is this? Artosh steadied himself, shocked, staring at Riku. To force out so much power, the consequences were dire, his body could have shattered into dust. Yet Riku pushed through, unhesitating. Astonishing will and resolve, Artosh praised. I, who have awakened. Lift the truth of kings high as the Dragon Emperor of Heaven. Embracing infinite hope and the dream of victory, I advance upon the king's path. I become the Dragon Emperor of Heaven. And guide you toward the radiant crimson future. With that, a power strong enough to sweep away everything erupted from Riku, his words thundering through the heavens and shaking all creation. His crimson flames condensed into his body, his armor deepening to true crimson, transforming into the true Dragon Emperor. This wasn't the juggernaut drive of the Red Dragon Emperor's gauntlet, for the gauntlet lacked the soul of Drake, only pure power, so Riku had to forge his own path. Besides, even with Drake's power, he'd never be a match for Artosh. Now, Riku had drawn out the pure source within the gauntlet and awakened his own Dragon of Supremacy state, even merging the power of the 8 gates into it. You could call it Dragon Emperor mode. Two supreme forces merged within Riku, breaking through the very limits of limits. Maybe it was thanks to the Saiyan god bloodline that his body didn't collapse, instead, he stabilized, his power soaring to terrifying heights. All of Discord felt suffocated beneath this aura, its mere pressure could kill. Most, under the pressure, fell to their knees, trembling in fear, Phantasma, Demon Lords, Gigants alike. Shui, Fia, Jibril, Zuralis, and the others could only watch in silence, even the Ex Machina barely held together their unstable energy orbs under the pull of this power. A miracle? No. It's a breakthrough barn of faith, the faith that longs for victory. Artosh murmured. Then come, try to seize true victory from my hands. Artosh laughed in delight, raising his right hand. His power poured forth, condensing into a golden lance. This was Divine Strike, Artosh's purest and mightiest divine technique, a miracle to make all races tremble. ZZZZT. Artosh hurled the golden spear, every ounce of his energy behind it. It flashed beyond light speed, tearing space to ribbons. Riku simply raised his dragonified hand and punched with unimaginable speed. His fist, shaped like a dragon, howled forward, everything crumbling, the void falling silent. Crack. With a single punch, Riku shattered Artosh's strongest attack, the Divine Strike, reducing it to golden shards exploding across the void. The energy flood sent nearby planets spinning off their paths. Splurt. Shattering the Divine Strike, the condensed Crimson Dragon energy blasted into Artosh, swallowing him and pushing him rapidly into the depths of space. Haha, you've completely surpassed my limits. Truly an astonishing human. Spent, Artosh had no strength to break free. But even as life ebbed, he laughed. You've claimed victory, taken it from my very hands. Then, let me give you this as a prize. A shining point of light burst from the Crimson Dragon, flying toward Riku. The Crimson Dragon pierced through several more planets, turning them to dust before exploding in the deep void. Even from afar, Riku stood firm against the shockwave, and his sword was shaken once again. If not for Riku's efforts to shield it, it would have been another disaster. The Divine Core, huh? What a gift. Riku flicked his right hand, catching the object that shot toward him from afar, the Divine Core of the God of War, representing the concept of war and strength. So tired. Then, as Riku felt his soul tremble and his body cry out in pain, he murmured, but at least, I finally won. With that, Riku released Dragon Emperor mode. He immediately compressed time to heal his wounds, erasing injuries that should have been fatal. But even with time compression, a deep sense of weakness washed over him. He had little power left. Suddenly, Riku's Saiyan God bloodline pulsed, a surge of energy swelling within him, making his strength and body even greater. Saiyan blood, after every serious wound, always grows stronger, especially the Saiyan God bloodline. Of course, Riku never expected that even healing his wounds by compressing time would still make him stronger. But the side effects of using all his trump cards still couldn't be erased. Even though he felt stronger, he had almost no energy left to reach his peak. Then, Artosh's Divine Core shone, finally merging into Riku's body. At first, Riku instinctively tried to expel the foreign power, but seeing that the core didn't cause trouble, instead acting as a silent source of power, giving him the traits of the God of War, he let it be. After all, this was a good thing. He then took out a modified soldier's ration pill, eating it. While it didn't restore much strength, it was better than nothing. Having finished this, Riku vanished from the spot, heading back to Disport. At this time, on the now settling Disport, an uproar was rising. All races stared dumbfounded at the sky. Because, under that surge of power, the God of War's presence had disappeared. What did this mean? It meant the God of War had been destroyed. In an instant, everyone in the alliance went wild with joy. My husband won. Fia pressed her hand to her heart, feeling it race, and finally let out a sigh of relief. Trust was one thing, but not being worried was impossible. What an unbelievable human. Whether him or Artosh, we underestimated both from the start, Reginlif said, both awed and a little bitter. Zuralis nodded. But Lord Riku is the most unbelievable of all. The other Dragonia agreed in unison. Sonia, Think, Kara, and the others all let out sighs of relief, collapsing to the ground, exhausted by the tension. Our master lost? How could our master lose? Azrael and the Fleagle stared blankly, murmuring. But this is reality. That old man, in the face of master's potential, was defeated. Jibril looked at her sisters, her eyes full of adoration. Master is the strongest. Azrael and the Fleagle could not refute this, falling silent. Hey, Azrael, Master is about to become the one true God. There will be no more wars in this world, only peace. I think you'll help me serve Master, won't you? Jibril's brilliant eyes rested on Azrael, her tone soft. Impossible. Azrael retorted, face cold. Really? Will you go against the old man's wishes? You should understand by now that he longed for defeat. After fighting Master, he had no regrets, only joy. And at the end, He sent a message to all the Flugel, didn't he? Drumroll continued gently. He told all Flugel to follow Master, with no hatred or desire for revenge. To loyally serve the Master for eternity. Azrael and the others finally nodded, faces complex. Seeing this, Drumroll smiled in satisfaction, her eyes dreamy. My dear Master, I brought you an army. If you don't reward me properly when all this is over, I might get a little upset. At Shui's side, space rippled, and Riku appeared before everyone. Husband. Master. In a flash, Fi and the others rushed over, full of emotion. We'll talk later. Right now, it's time to claim the prize. Riku nodded to them and smiled. To claim the prize. Hearing this, all the girls' eyes sparkled. God races were born from the Spirit's Quarter, and their numbers were infinite, impossible to kill them all. Riku had said, the only way was to destroy the Spirit's Quarter, and make the Star Grail appear, which would choose the strongest. Riku had just unleashed a power strong enough to slay the god of war, there was no doubt who was strongest now. Riku, you really won, Shui said, eyes bright and full of longing. Yeah, I won. Riku smiled, stroking Shui's head. Now, I'll leave the rest to you. Leave it to me. Shui smiled softly. Everyone stepped back, clearing the center. Shui ordered all Ex Machina to focus the terrifying energy under their control straight down into the earth. Boom. The energy pierced the ground, blasting into the Spirit's Quarter. At last, it exploded with power enough to destroy a planet. Crack. The Spirit's Corridor shattered, and the Star Grail appeared before Riku, the familiar dodecahedron, glowing with enchanting light. To prevent the planet from being destroyed, the Star Grail erased the wild energy, instinctively searching for a master. So, let me take the fruit of victory. Riku smiled and vanished, reappearing at the Grail. He reached out, taking the Grail into his hands. In that moment, the Grail shone ever brighter, merging with Riku, residing within him. The throne of the one true God. Now mine, Riku murmured, summoning the Grail into his palm. At that instant, the entire planet shone in celebration, and the birth of the one true God was a sight both beautiful and awe-inspiring. Well then, let me reshape this world. Riku gripped the Star Grail with confidence and smiled. Immediately, the Grail's light blossomed, a warm glow spreading over the land. It was as if time itself were being reversed. This board's damaged, ravaged surface was instantly restored to its original, pristine state, teeming with life. The black haze that once filled the sky was swept away. The dark clouds and bloody scars vanished. Sunlight once more covered the earth, bringing warmth to all. Blue skies and white clouds, everyone stared in disbelief, some with tears glimmering at the corners of their eyes. The war was finally over. The great war that had filled their hearts with dread, the fear of death lurking at every moment, was at last ended. All the races, even those who hadn't fought, were overcome with emotion, many falling to their knees in prayer. As for the Alliance, they knelt as one, joyfully calling out Riku's name and hailing him as the one true God. So this is sunlight. Blue sky. White clouds. So beautiful, so warm. Faya gazed at the sky, her eyes dazed with emotion. Such scenes had only been described in ancient texts. She'd dreamed of them, but never imagined she'd actually see it with her own eyes. Sonia, too, felt the change deeply. She loved to dream and imagine. Of course, vampires feared sunlight. Fortunately, Riku used the Grail's authority to create a special filter, much like the canopy in Little Garden, so the vampires were unharmed. Riku. You really did it, Kira murmured. This is the miracle Master has brought us, Think said, arms wide and eyes shining. Except for the last step, this really is the true end. Zerla said with a sigh. Even Azrael and the other Fleagle were left speechless, their gazes swirling with emotion. As for the Ex Machina, they simply basked in the warmth, resting content on the ground. Shui's lips curled with a gentle smile. Not just Disport, but even the planets destroyed in Riku's battle were restored with the Grail's authority. Those whose orbits were disturbed were returned to their places as well. Congratulations, Riku. Suddenly, a lively, feminine voice sounded in Riku's ear, his golden eyes flashing. Tet? Riku looked forward, murmuring. There stood a petite girl in a big checkered hat, with heterochromatic eyes, one adorned with a square, the other with a spade. Cute-faced, in a pink jacket and blue shorts. So you've revealed yourself? Riku said, his tone full of meaning. Yup. At the end, I got a divine core because of your power. But even if I'm a god, I'm probably the weakest, can't even beat the Fleagle. Tet laughed, completely relaxed. So you've been aware of me all along. Tet smiled in response. Well, shall we play a game? Riku nodded and then smiled, his lips quirking up. A game, huh? I may be the weakest god, but I'm still the god of games. Tet replied, smiling. I have nothing against losing to Shui. But losing to anyone else? I can't accept that, so I'd like to win this time, with Shui at my side. Riku shrugged, calm as ever. So, this time, Shui and I will challenge you together. Is that so? Now this really is interesting. You're a player too, after all. So, what's the wager? Tet asked brightly. Everything we have. Riku's smile deepened. You really are an interesting person, no, the one true god. Tet's eyes sparkled as she smiled. Riku gazed at Tet, then silently summoned Shui to his side. Well then, let the game begin. Riku held Shui close, produced a chessboard, and picked up a piece, his eyes glinting with excitement. With the clear sound of chess pieces falling, the game began within the Spirit's Corridor. Together, Riku and Shui joyfully played against Tet in a game where everything was on the line, in a place none could reach. In the silent Spirit's Corridor, the sounds of chess pieces falling were as crisp as pearls on jade. After several hours, Riku's lips curled up as he held Shui's hand. Shui, meanwhile, captured Tet's bishop with a piece. Checkmate. Riku and Shui looked at Tet, speaking in perfect unison. Oh, I lost. Just one step away. Tet said with a playful pout. You two really are strong. With Shui at my side, I'll never lose, Riku replied, smiling. And you should know that best, Tet. After all, you were born from our combined faith, the god of games, yes. Tet smiled sweetly, blinking her big eyes. To lose myself right after being born. I might be the first god to ever do that. Haha, you really might. Riku laughed softly. Theoretically, there's a guaranteed way to win at chess, but it would require memorizing every possible game, something impossible for most. Shui, as an ex machina, could do it, and as the god of games, so could Tet. Thus, both sides relied on luring, traps, and strategy. Shui was a bit weaker than Tet in this, but with Riku by her side, they made up the difference. Their victory wasn't luck, but destiny. Riku and Shui will never lose. Shui's eyes shone, voice full of certainty. Yes, I see that now. It really is a pity. Tet looked at Riku and Shui, then said brightly, well then, I look forward to working with you both from now on, my two masters. Riku and Shui exchanged a smile. For Tet, they had a special fondness, if anything, she felt like their daughter. While Riku, Shui, and Tet played their game in the Spirit's Corridor, things outside were a bit chaotic. Because Riku had been gone so long, everyone feared something had happened. If not for Fi and the others calming them, things could have gotten out of hand. Why isn't my husband back yet? Fi muttered anxiously. Even Shui has vanished. Fi, calm down. My link with Lord Riku is still intact, so he's safe, Zerlis said, coming to comfort Fi. Zerlis, is that you? Fi stared blankly at the tall, statuesque woman with silver hair, blue eyes, and dragon horns radiant in her elegant dress. She didn't recognize this woman, but that aura was unmistakable. Yet, as far as she knew, the Dragonia had never been able to take on human form. Not just Hatsu's Fi, but Sonia, Think, Kura, and the others all stared curiously at Zerlis and the group behind her. Hee hee, I knew you were up to something lately. Turns out you were researching shape-shifting magic. So you finally mastered it, huh? Just couldn't wait to serve master yourself? Space rippled, and Jibril appeared, smiling mischievously. Yes. After all, you've all served Lord Riku so many times, while I've always been left out. That wouldn't do. Zerlis swept her gaze over the group, finally fixing it on Jibril, her tone calm. Fi and the others were left speechless by her bold honesty. That was almost too frank. Well, that's just your personality, never shy or sneaky, Jibril commented. You're the same, Zerlis retorted, actually, you're even more direct, you're the definition of a pervert. Humphrey. Can you blame me? Master is just too fascinating, Jibril replied, puffing her chest out with infatuation. This much shameless flirting left everyone else rolling their eyes skyward. Sorry for making you all wait. At that moment, the Spirit's Corridor reappeared, and Riku stepped out holding Shui in his arms, a radiant smile on his lips. With him came Tet, her whole presence brimming with lively energy. Husband, you're finally back. Fi rushed forward, beaming with joy, but her smile faded when she noticed Tet. Her red eyes glinted as she pouted, Humphrey, another girl? You really are a womanizer. Oh my, looks like another god, too, one that's just been born, Jibril remarked with interest. Seems that way, Zerlis agreed, eyes full of surprise. Hello, everyone. I'm Tet, little maid of both Riku and Shui, just call me Tet. I'm the god of games, and I just lost myself to my two masters in a game. Tet introduced herself cheerfully, her sparkling demeanor instantly winning people over. That's the situation, Riku nodded. Lost yourself. This is the first time I've seen a god like that. Everyone was speechless at Tet's admission. Oh, Zorlis and Reginlef, Riku noticed the transformed Dragonia with surprise. Congratulations, Lord Riku, on becoming the one true god, Zorlis said respectfully, with a gentle smile. It's truly astonishing you really did it, Reginlef added, admiration plain in his eyes. Their words drew murmurs of awe from all present. No one could believe how intense that final battle had been. Riku shook his head slightly. In the end, he had simply gambled everything on one final fight and won. Well then, before anything else, let's take care of the most important thing. Riku smiled, sweeping his gaze over everyone, before rising into the sky with Shui in his arms. The Star Grail floated into the air, radiating a beautiful glow. Is that the Star Grail? Everyone stared, entranced. Holding Shui close, Riku's voice rang out across all of Disport. In the name of the one true god, I establish the rules, the 10 covenants. 1. All killing, war, and plundering are forbidden in this world. 2. All conflicts are to be resolved by games. 3. Each game must have a wager that both sides consider equal. 4. Provided the third rule is not violated, any game, wager, or challenge is permitted. 5. The challenged party has the right to determine the rules of the game. 6. Wagers made by invoking the covenants must be upheld without fail. 7. Group disputes must appoint a representative with full authority. 8. Anyone found cheating during a game will be considered the loser. 9. By the name of God, these rules are unbreakable and eternal. 10. Let's all have fun together, in peace. As his words ended, the Star Grail activated Riku's rules, transforming the world itself. Every race listened in awe, soon erupting with joy. Thank you for your blessing, one true God. All present knelt, offering their loyalty. War and slaughter had finally ended. Riku, my master. Thank you. Tet gazed at Riku in wonder, her voice a soft whisper. This world was made just for her. A world of games, huh? Fia, Jibril, Zerlis and the others all smiled. Looks like things won't be boring from now on. Most races had come to hate war. After such a hard-won peace, who would want to fight again? But if the world really became a utopia, well, maybe it would be a little too peaceful. Well then, let me witness what possibilities the future of this world holds. Riku withdrew the grail and looked down upon the gathered races, quietly. Shui, don't you want to say something cool? He glanced down at Shui, curled in his arms. I don't need to say anything. Right now, I just want to stay by your side. It's the safest feeling in the world. Shui looked up at him, her voice soft. Is that so? Riku smiled gently, stroking her hair. The sight made Fi and the others a little jealous. Master, would you like to deal with the Fleagle situation? Jibril appeared at his side, asking sweetly. There might be a surprise for you. The Fleagle, huh? Riku looked at Jibril strangely, but finally nodded. The Fleagle needed dealing with, and the rainbow chest was more important still. After saying a few words of reassurance, Riku dismissed everyone present, telling them to return home for now. He planned to hold a grand celebration for the restored peace and tranquility of the world, but only after he finished taking care of the remaining business. What Riku didn't know was that, as they left, Pink and the other women came to a silent agreement to make this day a sacred holiday. It would become a day to honor Riku's greatness and commemorate the deeds of the allied races, the day of divine advent. In this world, there was truly only one god in their hearts, Riku, the one true god. Riku had no idea about this. He had already taken Jibril, Tet, Shui, Fia, and Zerlis to Avonheim. As for why Fia didn't leave like Think or Sonia, it was because the Werebeast had only sent her to the war. She didn't need to escort any clanmates home. As for Zerlis, she was Riku's retainer, so she naturally followed. And Reginlef was now leading the Dragonia. Master, congratulations on becoming the one true god. When Riku appeared before Azrael and the other Fleagle, Azrael, in childlike form, wore a complicated expression but finally knelt, bowing her head. As Azrael knelt, the other Fleagle did the same, their faces similarly conflicted. After all, this was their creator's final wish. They had to obey, or it would be the ultimate disrespect to Lord Artosh. Now, all the Fleagle had no choice but to admit Riku's overwhelming power and charisma. Why had their creator, even after dying in battle, smiled? Perhaps that was his wish. Jibril, explain the situation. Surveying the crowd of kneeling Fleagle girls, Riku glanced at the grinning Jibril beside him. In his mind, the Fleagle should have been mortal enemies with him, calling him master should have been impossible. Master, shouldn't you be happy? See, I've brought all my sisters here to be your subordinates. If you want to do all sorts of improper things, that's fine too. I guarantee they're all pure and innocent, totally clueless about such things. Jibril smiled mischievously. Shui just blinked, clutching Riku's sleeve, while Fia glared daggers at Jibril. This woman was just looking for trouble. If all 500 Fleagle became Riku's harem, it would be chaos. Zoralis, too, stared at Jibril with a blank face. That woman really did have a knack for stirring things up. Ahem. Enough nonsense. Riku coughed, shooting Jibril a glare. Not that he'd admit he was tempted for a second there. Thinking it over, Riku immediately realized what was going on. It had to be Artosh's doing. No matter how persuasive Jibril was, she could never have swayed these die-hard Fleagle. Jibril, as the Fleagle's leader, it's up to you. I won't interfere. That's true for all races. Riku's gaze swept over Azrael and the others before finally resting on Jibril. That's all. I have things to do. You can all explore here. With that, Riku vanished, leaving the girls dumbfounded. Oh, I failed. Jibril sighed with disappointment. Helping Master build a harem was a maid's duty. She'd wanted to get Azrael and some of her more talented sisters into Riku's harem. It would have benefited her and the Fleagle as a whole. Little Jibril. You really? Azrael was torn between laughter and tears. She might not know much about that kind of thing, but that didn't mean she was clueless. Idiot Jibril, don't drag me into your schemes. Fia finally exploded, glaring hatefully at Jibril. Oh, is the little brat jealous? Jibril giggled. Fia immediately activated her blood destruction and lunged at Jibril, who counterattacked. Bang bang bang, the ruckus was endless. It looked fierce, but under the covenants, no one could really get hurt. Zoralis just watched the squabbling pair in silence, while Shui gazed into the depths of Avonheim, waiting for Riku. As for Tet, she had disappeared somewhere. Maybe Jibril is right after all. The Fleagle looked at Jibril teasing Fia in the sky, and a wave of curiosity rose in their hearts, a hunger for knowledge. Elsewhere, Riku made his way through the ruined hall, heading for the God of War's throne. With a gust of wind, he blew away the rubble, revealing the silent throne and, beside it, the rainbow treasure chest. Riku gazed at the throne, shook his head, and walked over, placing his hand on the chest radiating magnificent, brilliant light. Ding. Rainbow chest unlock condition. Defeat the God of War, fulfilled. Unlocked successfully, a system prompt sounded in Riku's mind, surprising him. So there really was a condition for opening the rainbow chest, and it was to defeat the God of War. Back then, when he first saw Artosh, he'd completely ignored the chest. All he'd wanted was to fight and win. Never expected to follow the correct sequence by accident. Ding. Congratulations, Master, you have opened the rainbow chest and obtained world sovereignty. The rainbow chest slowly opened, a 7-color door rising from within as the system's voice echoed in his mind again. World sovereignty allows the Master to travel freely between worlds, with the authority to alter any world under their control at will. When traversing other worlds, you may, by special means, absorb their world sovereignty and potentially take control of them. World sovereignty. Riku was shaken by the words in his head. The Star Grail was powerful, but still limited. There were things it simply could not alter, such as the inherent traits of different races. But this world sovereignty was absolute. As Riku's thoughts swirled, the rainbow orb from the chest merged into his body, fusing with the Star Grail and transforming it into a dazzling, rainbow-colored form, mysterious and beautiful. What an unbelievable thing I've obtained! Riku exclaimed in awe. System, if I wanted to modify myself and Shui and the others to become immortal, would that be possible? Riku's eyes sparkled, his heart surging with excitement. Be it human or god, everything has an end, but Riku didn't want to turn to dust when his life ran out. He not only wanted to be immortal himself, but to grant immortality to his women too, to experience everything the world had to offer. It's possible. But it can only be done in worlds you already control. If you travel to another world, any modifications will be reverted to their original state, strength, lifespan, and everything will return to normal. If the Master can, by special means, devour the fate of another world and gain its world sovereignty, then your authority will extend to that world as well. You don't need to completely gain another world's sovereignty for it to be effective. Even partial control will allow for partial effects. When you've devoured enough world sovereignty from other worlds, you won't even need to consume new sovereignty to influence new worlds. Your own domain will naturally take hold. Even so, that's already broken as hell. Riku took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, though his eyes burned with excitement. If he had to compare, this world sovereignty was like a combination of Zeno and Super Shenron from Dragon Ball. Except even stronger. Sure, it had the drawback that you had to control a world sovereignty for your modifications to take effect, but that tiny flaw was nothing compared to its power. Now that I controlled this sport, I could just settle down here and spend eternity with Shui and the others. Immortal life wouldn't be so bad. But it feels a bit lacking in excitement. Summoning the rainbow glowing Star Grail, Riku felt the power of sovereignty within, his lips curling into a smile. Well then, let's set a small goal, control 100 or so worlds, then try to fuse them all together and build my own, never-before-seen world. He gripped the Star Grail, mumbling to himself. As he spoke, his eyes shone with ever brighter light. A whole string of wild ideas appeared in his mind. Huh? Why does the Star Grail look so pretty now? Master, did you do something to it? At that moment, Tet came bouncing over, peering curiously at the Grail in Riku's hand. Secretly following Master isn't allowed, you know. Do you want to be trained as a little maid the moment you're born? Riku tucked the Grail away and glanced mischievously at Tet. Sorry, please don't train me. I'm still just a kid. Tet immediately looked flustered, her face flushing bright red, her special eyes darting around. Of course, she knew exactly what training meant. She'd seen Riku train Drumroll and play with the other girls. Even though back then she had no divine core, no real consciousness, and her mind was blank, those memories were still imprinted within her. Now that she'd gained a divine core and her own will, those memories made her deeply embarrassed. Alright, I'm just kidding. Seeing Tet react so strongly, Riku blinked, then understood why. Smiling, he patted her on the head. Tet was basically like a daughter to him and Shui. Even though all three of them were different races, Tet had been born because of him and Shui, there was no denying that. At this point, he really couldn't think of her in any indecent way. Let's go. Riku shook his head, hands in his pockets, and strolled outside. So this is what it feels like to be doted on. Tet touched her head and mumbled, but being treated like a daughter. It's a little frustrating. She pouted, muttering under her breath. Wait for me. Seeing Riku already heading out of the ruined hall, Tet hurried after him, sticking close behind. When Riku finished his stroll and returned to the original spot, he found Drumroll waiting for him. Master, as the Fleugil's representative, we've decided to use a roundtable system to manage our race pieces. We'll vote on important matters and so on, Drumroll said with a smile. But that's all Azrael and the others' business. I just want to stay by your side. That's fine. Riku nodded, unsurprised. Master, if you ever need anything, please tell us. No matter what it is, we'll do it. Azrael knelt on one knee, speaking softly. For now, their reason for existing was to serve Riku, otherwise, they couldn't find any meaning in their continued existence. An intense emptiness echoed in their hearts. I'll call for you when the time comes. Riku could understand the Fleugil's mood. But he had no plans to help them with some things, they have to figure it out for themselves. Well then, fine, Shui, Drumroll, Tet, Zuralis, let's go. Riku looked at the girls beside him and spoke gently, not giving priority to any one of them. With that, he teleported everyone away, leaving the Fleugil behind in silence. As soon as they returned to the Werebeast settlement, all the Werebeasts greeted them with respectful salutes. Everyone was wild with excitement. Riku left the public appearances to Faya, letting her handle the socializing. As for him, even though the Star Grail, fused with world sovereignty, had healed all his fatigue and hidden ailments, Riku decided to take a leisurely afternoon nap. It wasn't until evening that he woke up and, walking the corridors alone, planned to soak in the hot springs. No matter how strong he became, he was still going to enjoy life. Come to think of it, where are Shui and the others? They're all out tonight. Riku murmured to himself as he relaxed in the bath. With his senses, he could easily pinpoint the girls' locations. No, wait, Zuralis is still here. No sooner had he said it than Zuralis entered, wrapped in a towel. She joined Riku in the hot spring, sitting beside him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Shui won't be coming home tonight. She and the others lost to me in a game, so my condition was that they spend the night out, Zuralis said quietly, looking at Riku. So, Lord Riku, tonight it's just the two of us. Riku was stunned. Was this a clear invitation? And what kind of game could she have beaten all the other girls at? He'd never realized Zuralis was so skilled at games before. Zuralis, you really are beautiful like this, Riku said, rubbing his face, finally giving her a compliment. Lord Riku, don't you think it's a little late to say that? You only glanced at me when you first saw me. I was planning to give you a surprise. Zuralis pouted in mock resentment. Riku couldn't refute her. Sure, Zuralis looked incredibly beautiful now, truly charming, but he wasn't the kind of man who'd get distracted by every pretty face at the time. There were more important things to do than appreciate her appearance. I'm just teasing you, Zuralis laughed, seeing his reaction. But before I knew it, I was drawn to you, Lord Riku. I want to carry you on my back during the day and serve you at night. Zuralis spoke from her heart. Without realizing it, these feelings just filled up inside me. So, Lord Riku, if you don't mind, will you let me serve you? Zorlis leaned her head on Riku's shoulder, her soft hand reaching out for him, her voice filled with longing. Riku touched his face, feeling a flutter in his chest. Was this the so-called Dragon Rider? A Dragon Rider by day, and another kind of Dragon Rider by night. Then I won't hold back, he said, and without hesitating, took the initiative. If a beauty gives you such a clear signal, would you even be a man if you didn't act? Obviously, Riku wasn't some stoic ascetic. In an instant, delightful sounds filled the air, the rhythm intoxicating, stirring the imagination. All night, Riku and Zorlis didn't rest. Not until the sun shone over the land did they finally stop, sharing a smile as they looked at each other. After catching their breath and letting the afterglow fade, the two took another bath and got dressed. For them, a night of activity without rest was no big deal. Today, though, there were more important things to do. A while later, Shui, Fia, Jibril, Koron, and Tetal returned. Shui didn't say much, she just winked at Riku. Fia puffed out her cheeks, glared at Riku, but didn't complain. Jibril joked with Zorlis, but Zorlis wasn't the type to back down, so the two quickly started trading playful barbs. Kara just shook her head, meaning to tell Riku to mind his health, but remembering his constitution and who he was, she swallowed her words, feeling a bit helpless. Maybe she really was the weakest one now. Tet's reaction was similar to Shui's, though she was a bit more bashful. Riku just shook his head slightly, then gathered everyone and led them to the sanctuary. The sanctuary was a floating castle Riku had created, used for inter-race meetings. Today was not only a day of celebration for all races, but also the day to hold the council, distribute territory, and so on. Everywhere, you could see the different races setting off fireworks from the dwarves, filling the skies with cheers and excitement. Riku and the others arrived at the sanctuary, where all the races' representatives gathered in the lavish sky garden, sitting around stone tables. Of course, demon kings and demonia were excluded. Riku had little fondness for them, as their intelligence was lacking. He didn't plan to wipe them out, but leaving them unattended was fine. As for the likes of the Phantasma, giants, and other large races, Riku used the Star Grail to set a special barrier that shrank their size to human form while inside. And so the council began. Riku didn't intervene, he just watched calmly. Still, as the one true god, Riku's human identity and his revered status meant that Kara, the representative for humanity, barely said a word before humanity was assigned the largest territory. Riku smiled quietly at this. He wouldn't play favorites, but Kara was his woman and his sister, there was no way he'd let her be bullied. Not that anyone would Phantasma, Gigants, fairies, maybe, but would think Nervalin for the elves, Fia for the were beast, Azrael for the Fleugil, Sonia for the vampires, and with Shui and Tet, no one would pressure Koron. Regenlif of the dragons and the dwarven chief both truly admired Riku. The other major races weren't fools either, so everything was settled smoothly. At last, it was time for the feast, the leaders of every race celebrating together. By the time everything was done, night had fallen. Back at home, Riku finally revealed his ambition, pulling Shui, Fia, Kara, Jibril, Sonia, Think, and Zorlis into one massive bed. Fia and Kara were embarrassed and tried to refuse, scolding Riku for being shameless. But with Riku's insistence and the help of Jibril, Zorlis, and Shui, the three traders were eventually convinced. Sonia and Think, the two maids, didn't say a word. In the end, Riku truly had a night to remember. This is such madness. With a master like this, my future is really uncertain. Tet sat alone on the rooftop, swinging her little white legs as she gazed at the starry sky, mumbling to herself. A month later, the territory distribution was complete, the nations established, and Riku quietly used his power to make himself, Shui, and the others immortal at least within this world. For now, it was enough. With all that done, Riku decided it was time to leave this world, travel to others, and gather more world sovereignty. He also granted Tet some authority, making her his representative to help manage this world, acting as the one true god's right hand. Well, let's go, Riku smiled, summoning the Rainbow Star Grail. Instantly, the Star Grail blazed with color. Space began to ripple, forming a giant, black portal. Riku, you promised you'd never leave me behind. Just as Riku was about to step inside, Shui's voice rang out. She'd somehow appeared behind him, her gaze stubborn and determined. Sorry. Let's go together, then. Riku blinked, then smiled gently. He'd originally planned to go alone, since other worlds were unpredictable. But with Shui so insistent, there was no way he could refuse. Hearing Riku's answer, Shui's face lit up with a sweet smile. At last, Riku picked Shui up in his arms and stepped into the portal. And just as they entered, Another figure darted inside after them. The next moment, the portal closed. Chapter 55 A World Unknown. The sky was a shade of purple, clearly not the normal human world. And at one point above a certain luxurious castle in this world, a pitch-black rift suddenly tore open the sky, forming a dark spatial gate. Riku, holding Shui's hand, was the first to step out. Following behind was a beautiful woman with a geometric halo behind her head, and wings woven of light, the unmistakable Drumroll. This time I'll let it go, but next time I catch you doing this, I'll spank your butt until it's swollen. Do you hear me, Drumroll? Riku looked at Drumroll, exasperated. He had opened a spatial channel. Was this something just anyone could enter? Without a sovereign power-infused star grail, anyone else who tried to come in would only meet death or be lost forever. To secretly follow him in like this, she was seriously treating her life like it was worthless. Drumroll, you idiot. Shui also turned her head to silently glare at Drumroll. He, master, I'm sorry. I just couldn't help myself, I'm just too attached to you. I knew you'd notice me eventually. Drumroll replied with a sheepish smile, showing no real remorse. Snap. At that, Riku raised an eyebrow and flicked this love-struck maid on the forehead. Ow! That hurt. Suddenly scolded by Riku, a red mark appeared on Drumroll's smooth forehead. She held her head with teary, sparkling eyes, staring up at Riku. Riku only rolled his eyes, too lazy to keep lecturing her. With his strength, it couldn't have really hurt her, just stung a bit. With Drumroll's constitution, she wouldn't even flinch at serious wounds. She was totally playing pitiful. Riku, this world is overflowing with energy, but it's not the spirits of discord, it's some other unknown kind, Shui observed, scanning her surroundings in awe. Yeah, you're right. There aren't any spirits here, but it seems like I can still use this energy, Drumroll chimed in, quickly spinning her halo and conjuring a small black orb in her hand. But it'll probably take a while to fully adapt. Humphrey, I only need a few dozen minutes, Shui declared proudly, glancing at Drumroll. Sigh, a machine species, and an analyzer on top of that. Fine, Shui, you win, Drumroll muttered in defeat. While the two girls were bantering, Riku pulled up the system map. Devils and fallen angels of the underworld, grim reapers of the netherworld, angels of heaven, the 33 devas of Mount Sumeru, the 12 Olympian gods of Mount Olympus. Riku's eyes scanned the three-dimensional map displaying various powers, and a grin began to spread across his lips. You look pretty happy, Riku. Did you already figure out this world's situation? Shui asked curiously. Yeah. This world is going to be very interesting, Riku replied with excitement. Just from the information displayed on the map, he could tell this was absolutely a world of gods and demons and a very high-level one at that. Why? Because there were over 10 diamond treasure chests scattered across this world, and even 2 rainbow treasure chests. Not to mention, he could already sense many powerful presences scattered throughout the underworld. This proved one thing, the power level of this world was definitely not below Discord's, if anything, it was even stronger. How fascinating. I'm looking forward to this. Drumroll's lips curled upward, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Despite her lovesick devotion to Riku, she was, at heart, a battle-crazed war fanatic. Riku, something is coming, Shui suddenly said, looking downward. She could sense the beings approaching exuded an aura totally unlike humans. And in Shui's view, besides Riku, no human could possibly be this strong. Who are you people? How dare you linger in the airspace above the noble pure-blood devil Nabirius clan's territory? Don't you know there's a no-fly order here? No sooner had Shui finished speaking than several dozen figures flew up, surrounding the three. Each of them had black, leathery wings, a clear sign they were devils straight from myth. Nabirius clan? That's one of the 72 pillars of devil nobility from the legends. And pure-blood devil nobles on top of that. At those words, relevant knowledge popped into Riku's mind, and his eyes narrowed. He had a rough idea of what kind of world he'd landed in. Well, we sure got noticed fast. Devils, huh? Is that your race? Drumroll asked, looking around with open curiosity. An angel? A human? And the devil leader was stunned by Drumroll's wings, Riku's human-like aura, and the mechanical ornaments on Shui's head. It was too strange. Drumroll might look like an angel, but clearly not a normal one. And Shui, even less so. TCH. Angels coming to the underworld? How arrogant, the devil's expression turned cold. The underworld could only be entered through special channels, other methods were all illegal trespass. And now, for an angel to be here, undetected, if they hadn't just happened to spot her, they wouldn't have known at all. This was an extremely serious matter. Seize them. The young lord is currently researching angels. This one's perfect for an experiment. The devil captain's eyes flashed with malice. It wasn't anger at trespassers, it was pure ill intent. At that command, all the devil's eyes changed, and they lunged at Drumroll with wicked grins. Splat! But before any of them could reach her, a surge of power erupted from Riku. A wild, slicing wind instantly shredded every devil who approached into pieces, their blood raining down to the ground below. The remaining devil captain froze, staring at Riku in terror. A whole squad of middle-class devils wiped out in an instant, without even time to react. Ultimate class devil level strength? No, it's even higher. The devil captain stared at Riku, his face twisted with terror, unable to muster even the courage to flee. With just a single glance from Riku, his whole body was paralyzed, unable to move even a muscle. He understood in that moment, there was an entire dimension of difference between their strength. Even an ultimate class devil couldn't do something like this. A devil king level powerhouse. Why would someone at that level appear here as a human, at that? Drumroll, meanwhile, didn't look the slightest bit angry at the malice in their eyes just now. She still wore her usual, cheerful smile. To her, these so-called devils were nothing more than petty clowns. As for Shui, she cared only about Riku. Well, let me ask you a few questions, Riku said, staring coldly at the devil captain, his voice calm. Gulp. What do you want to know, sir? If I answer, will you let me go? The middle-aged devil was drenched in cold sweat, his voice trembling. First, who are the current 4 great satans of the underworld? Riku asked indifferently. Hearing that, the devil opened his mouth as if to say something, but realized he was in no position to resist. He could only answer in a hoarse voice. The 4 great satans are Lord Serge Lucifer, Lord Seraphol Leviathan, Lord Falbion Asmodeus, and Lord Adika Beelzebub. As he spoke, the devil was bewildered why this powerhouse was asking such a basic question. Riku murmured thoughtfully. Sure enough, this really was the world of high school DxD, and it seemed to be set after the end of the 3 factions' Great War. One more question, where is Rya's Grimoire right now? Riku's golden eyes flashed as he asked calmly. Princess Rya's Grimoire is currently in Kuwa Town, Japan. That's her territory, and it's said she is enrolled at Kuwa Academy, currently in her 3rd year of high school, the devil replied immediately. This was common knowledge to anyone of any standing, or anyone who paid attention to major figures. 3rd year, huh? Riku's golden eyes narrowed. That meant the timeline was just around the beginning of the main story,